she's like, hey, I'm about to bring this guy back from the bar, right? He has a big wad of money on him and a big chain. Make sure that you're hidden when he comes, like, don't come out, right? Born in Brantford, Ontario, which is like, it's not too big of a town, but it's always kind of been not that good of a town. You know what I mean? It's always been like drugs and crime, like my whole life. That's really all it is. Toronto's like maybe an hour from us, so we get a lot of this stuff from Toronto. Like guys will come from Toronto to sit in trap houses here, and there's a place called Hamilton, which is like a bigger city, which is also bad. You know what I mean? And it's all like kind of right here, so we kind of get like all the flow of that here. You know, guys come from out of town to do their dirt here, really. Um, so like I had like a normal childhood for the first like 8 to 10 years, and then I always looked up to my dad, right? Because I didn't really see him. He wasn't around a lot. We went there once a week for dinner, you know, to my grandparents' house. And my dad was always an alcoholic, and we didn't know at the time. I found out when I was older, but he was always smoking rock and doing powder and stuff, right? But we didn't know that. So he was always in and out of jail, like constantly. But it would be like 8 to 16 month bids, you know what I mean? But it was almost like we would go like 2 weeks to my grandparents, and then he'd be gone for like a year, and then we'd see him for like 2 or 3 weeks, and he'd be gone for 8 months. You know, that was like my whole life, really. And then I guess it just started to make me like bad. Like I wanted to be like my dad, which sounds like now to me that's super crazy. But when I was younger, like I remember being at my dad's girlfriend's. He was in jail, and they were together for a long time. I never called her my stepmom, but like we would go for sleepovers there and stuff. And I remember getting in trouble one time when I was like 10 because I said to her son, I'm like, I can't wait to go to jail like my dad. Like I remember saying that, and her like really yelling at me, right? Like she's like, your dad calls me every day, like telling me that he wants to be home type thing, right? And it never clicked as a kid, though. I always just thought that jail was cool. I was obsessed with jail movies and just jail. And then when I was 12, I caught my first assault charge, and it was on accident too, like 100% accident. So I was at school, and there was this girl I liked, which makes it even more fucked up. So you know how when you're a kid, you'll put your foot on the back of somebody's knee and press it and like make them fall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that this girl had reconstructive surgery on her knee at 12, right? So I did that to her, and I re-broke her whole knee just by doing that. And I liked her, you know, like I was trying to like flirt with her, I guess.
Yeah.
We were like 12. So I'm like, I start panicking. Me and a couple other kids pick her up, and we bring her to the principal's office, and I'm like telling her how sorry I am, and she's like screaming, crying because it's the knee, you know what I mean? And her mom wanted to press charges. So I got charged with assault, and they brought me to the holding cells, whatever, for like 8 hours. I remember being in the holding cells and like crying, looking at the camera, crying, like, I'm sorry, you know? And my mom came and picked me up like 8 hours later, and I got in trouble, obviously. And I explained to my mom, like, it was an accident. Like, I really did not mean to do that. And so my mom was like kind of lenient on me. And then 3 months later, I'm back at school, and I'll never forget this kid. His name was Spencer Norris. And we're 12, right? And me and a couple guys, we built this big, crazy snow fort, right? And this kid started breaking it. So I started punching him in the head. And the teachers came and grabbed us, brought us to the office, and his mom pressed charges. Mind you, this is like 3 months after I just got charged at the same school for breaking a girl's knee. And they don't care about my story, right? They just look at what happened. So I ended up going to open custody for like, I think it was like 4 months. And then I got into a fight there. So they sent me to secure custody in Hamilton. It was called Errol. And
What's open custody? What does that mean?
Okay, so open custody was it's basically like a group home, pretty much. They take you on outings. You can go to the movies. Like, you got to be good, and then you can like build up, like, your worker could take you to the mall, type things like that. And it's like a big house with rooms in it, right? And but you got to live there. You got to stay there. You can't just freely. Well, the door's always unlocked. Like, tons of guys would just run, right? But it's up the street from the police station. Like, you're getting caught the same day, or, you know, a week later, if that.
And then you go to closed custody.
And then, yeah, you go to closed custody, which is more like guys want to fight there, and it's more like there's more violence. Your kids and the kids that go to secure custody are too bad to be in open custody. So, it's more like they got something to prove, I guess. So when I went there, the funny thing is they had a 4-star chef there, because you go to a cafeteria, and the chef was a 4-star. Like, he used to make like these Kentucky Fried Chicken, like big chicken sandwiches and stuff. Like, the food was good there, but yeah, the kids, it was a lot crazier. It was always fights. And I remember the first time I got beat up there, these older guys, because mind you, I think I was about 13 by the time I went there, because I got the charges when I was 12, and then a couple months later, yeah, I was about 13 when I went there. So there was a couple older kids though, and this guy Scully, right? He was about to turn 18 and get sent to Barton Street adult in Hamilton, right? And him and this Raul guy, they told me, they're like, "Hey, McEwen, it's time to put in work," right? And I'm like, all right, cool, I'll do it, trying to make a name. And I hung out with one guy there, right? This kid's name was James. And I'm like, all right, who? And they're like, James. And I'm like, oh, motherfucker, right? Like, that's my friend. So I'm sitting there thinking, and then I'm like, all right, it's me or him, right? It's me or him. And you're a kid. So I remember being scared, right? These two older guys. And I'm like, all right. So I'm sitting on the couch beside James, right? And I got my fist balled up. And I'm like, yo. And he looks at me and he's like, why you got your fist balled up, bro? And I tried to throw a headbutt, but sitting beside him, right? So it completely, like, I think it hit him in the chest or something. And this kid jumped up like lizard quick and just fucking lit me up, right? So the staff member there, this guy Dan, he wanted to be a cop, and he couldn't pass the psych eval, so they let him be a CO at a kid's jail, right? So anyways, this guy, he tackles this James kid, and Dan was a big guy. He was a grown man, right? And he tackles this James kid, and James busts his lip open real bad, right? Well, I took credit for that. So even though I got lit up, they thought the headbutt bust his lip open, right? So they're like, all right, cool, and I just ran with it, whatever. And yeah, it was just a bunch of dumb stuff like that, and I finally got out, and I remember going back to Brantford, and I went to go hang out with a couple of my friends, and then they kind of put the battery in my back, because they're like, oh, yo, my boy just got out of jail, my boy, and we're kids. So I'm like, yeah, I just got out of jail. Like, like, I'm hard now, whatever. And not realizing how dumb it was, right?
Right.
So then I just continued to do like bad shit, right? And my mom didn't want me to live there anymore, because I was always trying to break her and my stepdad up, which I'm happy I didn't. This is 20 something years later, and they're still together, So, but I always try to break them up, and I just made life hard. So she sent me to go live with my grandma, which really bugged me, because I was like, well, why do my brother and my sister get to live with you, but I don't, right? So that screwed with my head. And then my dad had gotten out of jail, and my grandparents, my grandma's sister, Aunt Mark, she had passed away and left them a house. So they gave my dad the house, right? Which was in Eagle Place. And Eagle Place is like, it's always been like the rougher, bad part of Brantford, So obviously with my attitude at the time and then the area, it just clicked up real good. So so I go to live with my dad, and my mom never wanted that. But at this point, I'm like, well, what say do you have? You already sent me to grandma's. Like, my grandma, she loved me to death, but she was like a really big enabler for me, right? Like, no matter what I wanted to do, she would let me do it. If I wanted money for drugs, she giving me money. Like, she used to buy me a half ounce of weed a week just to go to school. You know what I mean? Like, and thought that she was helping. Like, which, I mean, like, in her own way, she was, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I go to live with my dad now, and mind you, this is still grade 7, right? Like, so I go to live with my dad, and he broke his hand, and this is when I found out that he was like a drug addict, and my uncles all sold drugs, and the house was like, it was borderline a trap house. Like, it was a couple nights a week, it was a trap house, and then a couple nights a week he was trying to be a dad type thing, but he was still drinking. You know what I mean? So, so I come upstairs the one day, because he gave me the room in the basement. So I come upstairs one day, and because I heard him throwing shit around. So he's got his hand in a cast, right? And he's like, hey, Dalt, come here, pal. And I'm like, all right, what's up? And he sits me down on the couch, and he's like, you're going to do something for me. And I'm like, all right, yeah, cool. Like, what do you want me to do? And he's like, I need you to cook this for me. And I'm like, cook what, And he's like, I'll talk you how to do it. He's like, that's powder. You're going to cook this into rock for me. And I was like, all right. So he put like a little point to like a 20 bag in a spoon, right? Just to see how I did, whatever. He like coached me how to do it, whatever, sprinkled the shit in. He had like these little water things that people use when they do needles, really. You rip the top off and you can just squirt little squirts of water in it. So whatever. So we do everything, we get it ready. And I cooked it too long. And he got so mad at me, he slapped me, right?
Boom. But he was right. I thought he was right there.
Yeah, he was, but I held the flame on it too long. He's telling me to take it off, right? And I'm still like holding the flame, like kind of mesmerized by it, like just watching it bubble and stuff. So it turned all gooey, whatever. Like it's still, you can still smoke it when it dry out and whatever, but it turned all like gooey and whatever. He got all mad at me, right? So we did it again, whatever. Finally, I got it right, and then he loads the pipe up and he asked me if I want to hit, right? And I'm like, yeah, like, all right, let's do it. So I smoked rock with my dad, right? And I'm 13, which is crazy. And from that point, I was like, I don't want to go to school anymore, Dad. And he's like, all right. He's like, let me think about it. So like an hour later, he comes back and him and my Uncle Gord, they had a list, right? And it was like patio furniture. You know what I mean? Like they wanted me to go get like a round glass table with like 3 chairs, stuff like that, barbecues, and they're like, well, if you're not going to go to school, you're going to like be working, and at the time I'm like, okay, I got a job, right? So now I get a couple of my little friends and like we go around backyards stealing barbecues and patio furniture and all this stuff, and I'm thinking I'm cool, and then it progressed into like my dad had his best friend, his name was Joe, my dad's name was Joe too, and they used to like turn my house into a WWE match. Like they would both get drunk and all high and just beat the shit out of each other. And this was like a daily thing. Like every night they just get drunk and just start fighting each other.
Are they angry or they just thought it was funny?
Yeah. Like, and the crazy thing is my dad always got beat up too. Like always, I always watched my dad get beat up by this guy. One time I'm like, I had a friend sleeping over.
If you sleep hot at night, you know how disruptive that can be. Whether you're having trouble falling asleep, you're waking up sweating in the middle of the night, or all of the above, that's where Ghost Bed can help. As the makers of the coolest beds in the world, Ghost Bed is your go-to for cooling mattresses, cooling pillows, and cooling bedding. From their signature Ghost Ice fabric to patented technology that adjusts to your body's temperature, every Ghost Bed mattress is designed with cooling in mind. So whether you want a plusher mattress that cushions your shoulders and hips, or a firm option with exceptional support, your Ghost Bed will keep you cool and comfortable all night long. When you purchase a Ghost Bed mattress, your comfort is guaranteed. You can try out your mattress for 101 nights, risk-free, to make sure it's the right fit for you. Plus, they offer free shipping, and most items are shipped within 24 hours. If you're not sure which Ghost Bed is right for you, check out their mattress quiz. You'll answer a few questions and get a personalized recommendation. Even better, our listeners can get 50% off site-wide for a limited time. Just visit ghostbed.com/Cox and use the code COX at checkout. Again, that's ghostbed.com/Cox with the code COX at the checkout to save a whopping 50% off site-wide.
And we hear all this banging, and I know what it is, but my buddy Sam's like, what's going on? And he's all like kind of scared, right? And I'm like, so we go upstairs, and I watch this guy Joe smash a plate over my dad's head, right? And I'm like, yo, what the fuck? I'm like, Dad, are you okay? Like, whatever. And then there was a box of light bulbs sitting beside the TV. And this guy starts grabbing the light bulbs and throwing them at me and my friend, right? Chasing us down the stairs. My friend grabbed his stuff and never came back to my house ever again. And it just progressed from there. So like my dad, he had this girlfriend. He met her at the courthouse, of all places. And this is when down patches were like, they weren't even a big thing yet, down around. It was just the patches. Mm-hmm. And this girl was on those and hydromorphs and stuff. And my dad had always been an alcoholic in like powder, rock, right? Never, what are they called? Opiates, right? So she kind of got him into those. And me and her really clicked because at this point I hadn't talked to my mom at all. Like I really like pushed my mom away because I just felt like fuck you. Like, you didn't want me there, but you wanted my brother and my sister. Now I understand it. I was just like a really bad kid and I was hard to deal with, right?
Right.
So in my brain, I didn't have a mom, right? Like I cut her off completely. So me and this girl really like clicked. So I started calling her mom and stuff. She started calling me her street son, and I still don't know like the effect of like the drugs and how it's like really, really like make me do fucked up shit, right? And she had an apartment herself, which was downtown, and downtown has always been bad. Like that's just, if you want anything, you go downtown, you're finding it in like 5-10 minutes, right? It's not that big of a place, so it's everybody's on. They're out front of this Tim Hortons and out front of this dollar store, and it's just all right there. And there's one main strip. It's called Market Street, and all the bars are on it, right? Like almost like side by side. So she lived just around the corner from that on this place called Parkside Drive, and she had an apartment above another house, right? And it was a drug house downstairs, and hers was a drug house upstairs, right? So it was just always a party. And I went to her house for a couple of days. She brought me there, whatever, and I started meeting more people, like older people. I never hung out with anybody my age. They were always like 6-7 years older than me, right? And they're always like, I don't know, they always thought it was cool that I was this young kid that like I had no fear. Like I would just do whatever they asked me to do, So they had kept me around for that, whatever. So I leave there the one day and I go home and I have this guy, Todd, with me. And Todd was like 30 and I had just turned 14. And we're walking back to my dad's because I'm going to get my Xbox so this guy can sell it, right? And there's cops everywhere around my dad's house. They have it surrounded. And we're like, what the fuck? And so I'm sitting on the curb across the road with this guy, and this guy's like, let's go. And I was like, nah, like that's my dad. Like I want to see what happens, like what's going on, right? And there was this, it wasn't a screen door, it was like a glass door, and it could lock. So my dad had that locked, and he opened the front door because the cops were like, I walked up and the cops were like, you got to go. And I was like, that's my dad. I live here. So they're like, Joe, we have your son out here. Come out here. You don't want your son to be around this, right? So my dad had that glass door locked, and he opened the door, right? And he's like, my son can come in, but you guys can't, right? And they're like, no, like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, Dad, what's going on? And my dad's like, just let my son in. It was this big thing, right? And like, I don't know, probably like 2 hours later, they ended up getting my dad, right? He tried to sneak out the back door like an idiot. He probably just got real high, but like the house was surrounded, and our backyard linked right up to the field of the school behind us too, right? So it's fucked up. But he tried to sneak out the back, and they got him. So in my brain,
what were they raiding the house for? I mean, was there something specific? Or?
My dad beat somebody up downtown, and he ran back to the house, and they like a couple cops were chasing him, right? And he got into the house, so they just kept calling, like more units just kept showing up because they had no idea if he had guns in the house or whatnot, right? So there was probably like 6 or 7 cop cars and like 13 cops all around the house. Like it they were my dad has a real long criminal history too, though, right? Like always in and out of jail. He is known in town. Like when I went to court, well, this is skipping a little bit, but so when I was 18 and I caught my first adult charge, which was stupid because I had community service from a youth charge and I never did the community service. So when I turned 18 and they realized I didn't do the community service, they came and charged me with a breach of probation, but as an adult now because I'm 18, right? So I was in court and there was this judge, Judge Lenz, and my dad told him one time, Judge Lenz was like, do I look like I fell off the turnip truck? And my dad's like, yeah, you definitely do. So this guy just had a grudge for my dad, right? And I'm standing in court, and I used to go to court with my dad all the time when he went for court. And Judge Lenz was like, you're Joe's son, aren't you? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I'm going to give you 5 days in the Brantford, we called it the Brantford bucket, but he's like, I'm going to give you 5 days in the Brantford jail so you can see where your life's headed. Mind you, I hadn't seen my dad in 18 months at this point, right? So they bring me into the back cells, whatever, waiting to get transferred to court. And I know my dad's in there. And they're like, do you need PC, da-da-da? And I was like, absolutely not. Like, my dad will beat the shit out of me. So we go, and I'm sitting in the bullpen now, which is, the Brantford jail was very small. There was only 6 ranges, and there was like 8 cells on each range, right? So it was very local. And I'm sitting in the bullpen, and there's this other guy in there, and I'm like, hey, do you know Joe Mercanti? And he's like, yeah, that's my cellie. And I was like, no shit. I was like, that's my dad, right? But the CO only heard me say my dad's name, and my dad lived in that place. Like, so the CO comes up, and he's like, hey, why are you talking about Joe? And I was like, that's my dad. And he's like, for real? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, hold on. So my dad worked in the kitchen, and range 3 was the kitchen range. So my dad ran the range though. And he goes to the kitchen, talks to my dad, and he comes back. And I don't know that he's doing that, but he comes back and he goes, hey, your dad wants to know if you have a black eye yet. I'm like, what are you talking about, a black eye? Just trying to scare me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, so there's no room on that range, so we're going to put you up on 6, which was the native range, because Six Nations Reserve is right beside Brantford. Like, going up one road, you get onto the reserve, right? And that range was really crazy. So they're like, we're going to put you on range 6. And I'm like, my heart starts beating. I'm like, oh no, that's not going to be good. Like, I am 100% clearly Irish and not native. That's not going to be fun. So
Right.
the guy beside me, he's like, I'll go to 6. You can go on range with your dad. And the CO's like, yeah, you'll do that for him? And he's like, yeah, no problem, right? So he lets me go to that range. So I get on the range, and my dad's still at work in the kitchen though, right? So I haven't seen him yet, and nobody knows that I'm his son or anything. So I get on range, and there's this guy, Smiley, this big white guy, and he's like, I go to sit, and they make hammocks. Because the bars were right here, the stools would be right here, and then the TVs and the cells would be right there. So they would take jumpers, knot them up, put them around the bench, and then tie it to the bars, right? And then it's a hammock. So I go to sit in one of these hammocks, and this guy's like, what are you doing? Like, get the fuck off of that. Like, you just stepped on the range. Go sit on the stool by the phone. And I was like, all right, bet. So I go and I sit there or whatever, and I'm like, damn. And all of a sudden, I feel somebody grab me through the bars, right? Boom. And I'm like, I jump. I'm like, what the fuck? So I turn around, and I didn't recognize my dad at first, because when he went to jail, he was like probably like 140 pounds, right? And he's like over 200 pounds now, working out every day. Like, I didn't recognize him at first. And I'm like, what the fuck? And he's like, it's dad. And I was like, oh shit, right? So they let him in the Sally Port, whatever. And he's like, hey, come here. So he's like, have these guys been treating you all right? And I was like, that guy was kind of a dick to me. So my dad's like, hey, listen up. I'm like, this is my son, right? Like, and then everybody started, Buddy comes to me. He's like, here's a brand new jumper. There's another guy that was an artist. He's like, yo, if you want me to draw anything, I'll draw it, whatever. My dad's like, what cell are you in? I'm like, 2. He's like, get your shit. You're coming to my cell, right? So boom, I go in my dad's cell. I was sleeping on the floor because my dad had a cellie too. And it's ironic because the judge tried to like scare me straight, but what he did was give me a reunion with my dad and kind of enable it a little more, because my first jail experience as an adult was like, it was great. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I was gonna say that doesn't sound like you had a bad experience at all.
Mm-mm. So that kind of backfired a little bit, but when I got out, my daughter's mom at the time, she had just gotten pregnant. Like, when I got out, I got her pregnant, whatever. So I was like, okay, maybe it's time to get a job, right? So, I go to a temp agency, and I start working on the back of a garbage truck, throwing garbage bags, right? And I really didn't like it, but whatever. I stuck it out for a little bit, and my grandfather worked at a recycling plant for like 13 years, so he had got me a job there. So I left the garbage truck and went to a recycling plant. Like, that was much better. So I'm working on a line now, sorting garbage, like throwing cans in here and glass in here. And it was terrible, but I stuck it out for about a year. And the way I got fired was, there was this guy from my city, and he had a name for like selling drugs and stuff. Well, his mom was the receptionist there. So he also got a job there. And then just like sold drugs after work and stuff. So he had a legit income, right? And me and this guy hit it off. He was a little older than me. His name was Chris. And I'm there for about a year at this point, and they promote me to the line lead. So like, really all I did was control the speed of the line on a control box, right? So they had opened up a afternoon shift. and they chose me, Chris, and my friend Zach that I've known my whole life, who was the Bobcat driver. Like he scooped the garbage up and put it in the hopper. So they had chosen us three to go to afternoon shift because we all drove to get, like Zach drove me and Chris both to work. So they're like, okay, perfect, you know? And then they brought in temps. So me and Chris were in charge of the temps. So I'm over on the paper line now and Chris is on the garbage line. And there's this temp that, and we start talking and he's like, yeah, I sell weed, da da da. And I was like, oh, for real, eh? I'm like, yo, I'll take 2 ounces tomorrow. Because he's like, it's really good kush, da da da. And he's like, oh yeah, for real? And I was like, yeah, bring 2 ounces tomorrow and I'll buy them off you, right? And I think it was like $300 a piece or something like that. And I go and I tell Chris at break, I'm like, yo, this guy's gonna bring me weed tomorrow. You want to go in on it with me? Because at first I had full intentions of paying for it. So I'm like, you want to go in on this with me? And Chris is like, yeah, let's just take it from him. And he's like, I'm like, what? Like, he's like, yeah, bro. He's like, I'll get Zach to jam the hopper, like overfill the hopper, which the hopper is like, he dumps the garbage in outside, then it goes up a conveyor belt and drops onto the line, right? So when the hopper jams, though, the temps aren't allowed to go in it. So me or Chris have to lock it out and then go in it and unjam it, right? So Chris is like, get the weed from him, put it in your locker, right? Or tell him he can store it in your locker so he doesn't have it in his pocket. I'll go into your locker while we're working. I'll make it look like I'm going to the bathroom. I'll take the weed. Then we'll get Zach to jam the hopper. You go in the front. I'll go in the back. We'll meet in the middle of the hopper and split it up. I was like, all right, cool, right? And then I'm like, what about this kid? He's like, tell him you don't know what happened to it. And I was like, all right, like, what's he going to do, really, right? So we do that. Buddy brings the weed. I'm like, yo, you can store it in my locker, da-da-da. I have a lock, right? So, boom, I put the lock on, but I don't click it in, right? So Chris goes and does it. Zach jams the hopper. We go in. We split the weed. And break comes. So we go to the break room, and we go to my locker. And I grab my wallet out of the locker, right? And I make it look like I'm trying to pull money out. And this dude's like, where is it? Where is it? He's freaking out, right? He's like, you don't understand. He's like, I work for these Asian guys, bro. They're going to want their money, da-da-da. And we're like, I think I was 19 at this point. This kid was like the same age as me. So I'm sitting there like, I don't know what happened, bro. Like, it was in there. You seen me lock it. Like, I don't know. You know, I'm like, I have the money right here. So this kid's like, what the fuck? He's freaking out. He starts crying. And he called his grandma. I kind of felt bad when he started crying. I'm not going to lie. So he calls his grandma and he leaves. He's like, fuck this. I quit. Like, I leave. He calls the temp agency and tells them that I stole weed from him at work. He ratted himself out to rat me out.
Right.
So I go into work the next day and I'm working whatever. And Chris comes up to me and he goes, hey, Monty was our boss. And he goes, hey, I just heard Monty tell my mom, because his mom was the receptionist, right? He's like, I just heard Monty tell my mom to pull your file. And I was like, oh shit. Like, oh no. So we worked till 3:30, right? This motherfucker let me work all day. 3 o'clock comes, right? And he calls me into the office. And he's like, he's pissed. And he's like, I think you know what this is about. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Like, what's going on? And he's like, that temp. And I was like, the guy that left yesterday? I was like, he broke down for no reason and just left. Like, he didn't even tell us why he was leaving, right? And he's like, oh, sorry, I missed a part. Monty called me and told me to come in on days because we were on afternoons when that happened. He called me and told me to come in on days. So, because he wouldn't have been there at the afternoon, right? So he's like, you know what happened last night, da da da, right? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, listen, you can either admit it or I can call the cops and you can come have them like explain it to them. And I was like, all right. I was like, I got this guy to bring me weed to work and I took it out of the locker. Yeah, bro. I was like, I panicked on the spot.
What are the cops going to do? They're going to say the same thing. Say, what the fuck what are you talking about?
Right.
You just say, hey, somebody stole something from me and they get arrested.
Right. My daughter's mom flipped on me. She's like, why didn't you just say no? She's like, you would have lied to the cops any other time. What the fuck is the deal now? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I think it was the pressure because my grandpa got me this job and he's worked here for like 13 years. And like, I just did this, you know, and so I tell him, right. I'm like, whatever. And he's like, I think you know that you're fired. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll go clean my locker. He's like, you got 5 minutes. Get the fuck out of my building, right? And I was like, fuck. So I leave, whatever. And I'm like, now I need to find another job. And I'm like, I guess it's back to the temp service. So now I go back to the temp service and I get hired at a place where you move cardboard boxes all day, right? So I'm like, this is not it. This is not it. And me and my baby mom had just gotten an apartment because my daughter was about to be born, right? So we got this little cheap apartment. And now I'm like, well, fuck, I got rent to pay and everything. Like, I really need this job. And then I changed my mind. I'm like, nah, fuck this. I'm gonna try and sell powder. Fuck it. So so I call my dad, right? And I'm like, hey, I need to come over, whatever. I'm like, I need you to put me in touch with Lee. I used to call him Uncle Lee. He passed it, he died in my arms actually, but we'll get to that. So Lee puts me on, right? And I just start fucking the bag up. Like, I start doing it, spending the money. Like, it's just not good. So me and my daughter's mom have to move back into my grandma's house. Like, it was not good at all. So eventually me and her, we break up, and I get with my son's mom, and I start doing like real bad at this point. Like, I was introduced to ice at this point. So once I did ice first time, I thought that I fell in love with it. Like, that there was nothing else in the world that mattered but, and I got a rush from like robbing people and doing all this type of shit, right? Like, being in confrontations, like, I loved it. So I start selling ice. This guy Ben, right? And this is right out, like, my daughter and her mom, they got their own apartment now. Like, she left. She ended up, she's with this guy was my best friend for 7 years, and then now they have a kid together. So my daughter's godfather turned into her stepfather. So that really fucking bugged my brain out too. And I used to get high and like message this guy all these threats and stuff, and like, oh man, this stuff I regret, and whatever. But so my grandma, she had this mud room in the back. It was like a sunroom, so it was built onto the back of her house. And my grandma's a baker, so it used to be like a baking station kind of. Well, she let me move in there. So all it would fit was a futon, a dresser, the washer and dryer were still in the corner, the laundry sink was over there, and like a table. So I started selling drugs out of there. Like, yeah. So I started selling meth, and I got robbed there the one day. The door got kicked in. And so I'm sitting there, and it had a screen door and a wooden door. And I always would sit with the wooden door open, but the screen door locked, right? So this time I didn't have it locked, and it was just like a tin screen door, right? So I'm sitting there, and I'm all high, right, tweaking out, and I don't even hear these two native kids, Byron and I can't remember the other kid's name, but they're twins, right? So I had just bought in a 40 cal, and it was sitting on the table. And I'm sitting there in the chair, and I have the doors behind me, and I'm sitting there like this, right? Just all tweaked out. And all of a sudden I hear this big boom, right? And I'm like, what the fuck? And I turn around, and they're coming through, and they both have machetes in their hands, right? So I'm like, oh shit. And my gun was sitting right there on like, I had a dresser that I used as like a table with the laptop and everything on it. And the gun was sitting right there. So they picked the gun up, They just kind of hold it on me. They open my drawer, they take all my stuff, and they leave, right? And I'm like, oh, fuck.
You know who they are?
Yeah.
These are guys you were selling to?
Yeah. So they're like these two. Well, the one kid's sober now. We ended up like making it right. I ran into them again. I robbed them. And then it was just, Brantford's so small that it's kind of like jail. Like, no matter where you go, you're going to run into somebody if there's problems. Right. You know what I mean? So they take all my stuff. I can't re-up. So now I call this guy that my buddy Ben introduced me to. His name was Hollywood, right? And he ends up being my plug. He comes over and he spots me like an ounce of dope. And I'm trying to get a gun from him again. But he gives me this extendo stick, this baton, right? So I start working for this guy. And I call my dad the one day, and I'm like, hey, like, I need you to bring me to some spots. Because my dad was in the streets, like, smoking rock and selling, and with my uncle. So like, he knew all the different dope houses, right? Because he's so much older. So I'm like, hey, I need you to bring me to a couple spots. I need to boost my clientele, basically, right? So he brings me to this house, which is like 4 blocks away from my grandma's. It was so close. So I ended up switching back and forth. I'd be at my grandma's, I'd be at this house, be at my grandma's, be at this house. So he brings me there and he tells me, hey, this is Sue and this is Joe. They're our second cousins. And I was like, oh, no shit. And she ran like a big rock house. Like, so I'm like, okay. Come to find out, we were never actually related. So anyways, they end up liking me because like my dad was likable, you know, like everybody that did drugs, they liked him, you know. He would rip people off, but he would do it behind the scenes. He would set it up, and so people liked him. They didn't know that he was really behind a lot of stuff, right? So anyways, they're all like, oh, this is Joe's son, this is Joe's son. So they like me, and I start selling out of that house, and me and Sue become really tight, and she keeps getting robbed, right? Like people, she'll be up for days, fall asleep, wake up, and her whole re-up's gone, all her money's gone, everything, right? So I was doing ice time and I'm staying up for like the longest I ever made it was 21 days. And I hallucinated somebody hop over my fence, come to my backyard with guns, woke my uncle up, everything. And he's like, there's nobody there. Go the fuck to sleep. Like, so I'd be up for days. So she's like, hey, this will work out perfect. You sell your ice, I'll sell my rock. You make sure nobody robs me and you ain't got to pay no rent or nothing. And I was like, deal, right? So I start living with her. And I get this little 2-shot 22. It was like a little Derringer, but it was a 22, right? And now I think I'm king shit. That thing made me feel so big, even though like it was the dumbest thing ever. So there's these 2 people that live upstairs, right? Kurt and Tara. And they work, our city, like Brantford was run by the Iraqis. I'm pretty sure they're both dead. I know one just died, and the other one I heard got beat to death in jail. But they found like 6 bodies on their property. Like you can Google them, Jazz and Sal. But they were like really running our city. They were getting like bricks and bricks of down, right? And they would give it to you and like, you better have the money, but they'll give it to anybody, you know? And I didn't know that Kurt worked for them. So I come in the house the one day and I'm like, because my cousin was getting mad. She's like, this is not a down house. Like, this is like it's so much better. But she's like, this is not a down house. It's rock only. Like, you're the exception for like, whatever. This is a rock house. That's what she kept stressing, right? So I come in the one day and they lived upstairs. So I'm at the bottom of the stairs and I'm like, yo, Kurt. So he comes to the stairs and I point the gun at him, right? And I'm like, yo, get the fuck out, right? I'm like, this is my house now. And he's like, you don't know what you're doing. And I was like, get the fuck out. So he leaves, whatever. This girl, Jackie, she was like my cousin's like best customer, right? So she comes over the one day and she has this guy with her. This guy's name's Derek, right? And down a lot of money. Like he was into real estate, but then he got into drugs real bad, right? So he had sold like 3 or 4 houses at the time. So he had a lot of money. So he starts buying powder. My cousin, well, they can't get a hold of my cousin the one day, and I'm at my grandma's. So Jackie messages me, and I was like, I got meth and MDMA right now. And she's like, well, so Paris is like maybe 30 minutes outside of Brantford, right? It's this little like country town. Well, Derek had 2 new build houses in a cul-de-sac there, side by side. So she's like, we'll pay for your cab right now. Come to Paris. And I was like, okay, deal. So I come out there and I walk in this guy's house, and this is when I like really believed that he had money. His entire like downstairs room was a home gym, like bench press, a rack of dumbbells, treadmills. There's like a big like the machine with the cables, right? And I was like, okay, this guy has money, right? So Jackie's like, show him some of your music, because like I used to rap, right? Like, and I never thought that I would be famous like all these other guys. I used to make music for myself, right? So anyways, she's like, show him your music, show him your music. So I play him a couple songs, and in hindsight, it was definitely just the drugs. But he's like, oh, you're so good, kid, like da da da. So I get his number. Well, I kind of cut Sue out because now I got him hooked on meth. So he starts messaging me all the time. So I'm coming out there. One day, we're in the kitchen, we're drinking. They had a water bottle of GHB, right? And Jackie drinks 2 caps of this GHB, but me and Derek were so high on ice, it didn't hit us. So we both drank a cap, but she passed out like maybe 20 minutes later. And me and Derek are just in the kitchen chilling, and he gives me a bottle of Ace of Spades. And I'm like, for real? This is like a $300 bottle, right? And he's like, this is yours. Like, I really like you, kid, da da da, right? So we're chilling, and he goes, you want to see something? And I'm like, what? And he's like, you gotta come with me. And I was like, all right. So behind his house, there's like a trail, and it's all like forest and then a cemetery, right? So he's like, you gotta come with me though. And I'm like, all right. So he's like, leave the gun here, because I still had that gun, right? So I leave the gun at his house, and I'm like, my heart's beating. I'm like, what's about to happen, right? So we walk up the trail, and it gets real dark, right? It's like pitch black. He turns the flashlight off, and we stop right before the cemetery, and it's like all forest. And he's like, you got to walk in here with me. He's like, grab my hand and just follow me. And I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? But I'm like, all right, let's go. I'm scared as fuck. I'm waiting at any minute. We're walking through this forest, and it's pitch black, man. Like, I'm just holding his hand, and at any minute, I'm like, I'm about to get like killed or tied up or something. Like, that's what I'm thinking, right? He's like, stop. We stop. He digs this up. We go back to his house, right? And I'm like, the whole time, I'm like, what the fuck is that? We walk in his house. It's a 3/4 of a brick of down. So it was like 750 grams of down. And he's like, you think you can do something with this? And I was like, what? And he's like, here, I'm going to give you a little bit and see if you can do something with it. So he gives me like 2 ounces of it, right? I leave the next morning, like when we're done partying, and I go to this Hollywood guy that I was working for at the time. And I'm like, yo, look what I got, bro. Like, I just found a plug, bro. And he's like, what? I was like, bro, this guy that buys powder off of my cousin started buying ice. Me, he has a down plug. But he doesn't, like, he does the down. Not really, you know what I mean? Like, that's the first guy I ever seen sniff a line of down. And
Right.
so he knew this guy, whatever. He knew these 2 twins that they went to jail in my city, but I think they're out now. But they were like super big down. They were like right beside the Iraqis, right? And he ended up getting bricks off of them. So he couldn't sell it though, right? So he starts going to me. I give it to this guy I'm working for. This guy buys it off me right away. He's like, bro, that shit is so good. So now I start moving. Like, I'm not even really going and selling it house to house or anything. I'm just going to my guy, this Derek guy, and bringing it back to Hollywood or bringing it back to my Uncle Lee, right? And they're just taking it. So this guy's loving me, right? But I had started getting him like more and more into ice. I was getting more and more into meth. But the way meth did to me is like, it made me like want to party or be aggressive and want to like get into confrontation. This guy started seeing drones following us everywhere, getting paranoid as fuck. Like, this one time, he locked me in the house for 2 days with him, because if I tried to leave, so he's sitting there with a gun, right? And he's like, did the drones follow you? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, bro, the cops are watching me. He's like, there's drones everywhere I go, bro. All the curtains are closed, everything, right? He's like peeking out the window. He's like, look at the drones right there. The drones right there. And I'm like, bro, you're tweaking. He's like, no. He's like, you cannot open that door because the drones will see inside my house. So for 2 days, bro, this guy's tweaking. I'm just giving him more. He's throwing me more money. I'm giving him more. But I had to like sit on his couch for like 2 days, man. Because if I open the door or open the window, the drones were gonna see in. Like, I completely messed this guy's brain up. Like, the last time I ever talked to him, he's living in the basement at his parents'. And like, when I met him, he had like 3-4 houses, bro. Like, I felt bad for that one. But so I leave this guy and I link up with my older brother, right? Who, he's like been in the streets his entire life. So just always been a junkie though. Like, never, he could never come up off more than like $300-400, you know? So
Why, just because he's got that bad of a habit?
yeah, like, it's just, no matter what he does, he'll self-sabotage himself.
Right.
He was just super into down. He was into needles, you know, like, but he was really, everybody knew him. It was kind of the same way as my dad got me into these different houses. My brother did the same thing, right? He brought me around different people, but more our age, right? So he opened up the scene for me, kind of. So my grandmother had sold her house because like I was just too much, and I feel terrible about this, but I'm the reason that they sold their house, and she's admitted it. Like it was just too much stuff, fights always in the back, people always coming trying to rob the house, just stuff like that, because they knew I always had stuff there. So she had sold her house, and I knew 2 months in advance. I had 2 months, but I was so on the drugs that like I didn't really think about tomorrow. I was in today, right? So that day finally came, and she's like, you got to get all your stuff out of here. Like, like I'd slowly started bringing stuff out. And that Derek guy that I knew, like he got me a storage locker, and like I'd start putting stuff in there, but it still didn't sink in my brain that like I was about to be homeless. Right. So the day came and she sold her house, and I was like, oh shit. So I'm like just walking around downtown, and I'm like, I have nowhere to go. Like this is crazy. So I call my dad, and I explained to him what happens. So he got me a hotel room, right? Because I was just doing a lot of drugs at this point, and I wasn't really selling them. And even though I was doing that for Derek, it was like I would bring it from Derek to my uncle or to Hollywood, but the money would go back to Derek, and he would piece me off like $200-300, really, you know what I mean, out of a couple grand. So I was spending my money more than I didn't save no money, right? And so now I'm homeless, and I'm like, oh shit. So I call my dad. We get a hotel room, and I'm there for a couple days. And this Austin kid comes by, and he has a Beretta M9, and I'm like, yo, let me get that off you. And he's like, $400. And I was like, bro, give me it, and I'll get you the money with it, So he's like, all right, I know you're good for it. He gives it to me. I call this Trent kid, and I had known Trent from my cousin's crack house, right? And I call him, and I'm like, hey, I need a Cuban, which is 7 grams of powder. So I'm like, hey, I need a Cuban. So he's like, all right. He comes over. Boom, I rob him in the hotel room, right? He's like, yo, for real? He's like, yo, I'm calling your dad. Like, I'm telling your dad that you did this, da-da-da. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. So my dad calls me. He's like, hey, did you just fucking rob Trent? Like, that's one of my guys. You know what I mean? Like, one of the guys that my dad buys stuff from, and they were
Right.
good. I'm like, you know what, dad? Fuck you too, right? So, well, I was just on some bullshit. So, well, I piece Austin off. I pay him for the gun, right? Well, my brother brings over this girl, Vanessa, and she's this Brazilian girl, right? And she was a prostitute, but I didn't know at first. So I like kind of start flirting with her, and like we do our thing, and then she's like, she just doesn't leave the hotel room. And like 3 days go by, and she's like, hey, like I need to work. And I was like, oh, all right, what do you do, right? And she's like, well, like can I use the room? And I was like, use the room? Because like I'm thinking this is about to be my girlfriend, right? So
Right.
like, what do you mean use the room? And she's like, well, like I have a couple in calls, right? And I was like, oh shit, you sell your pussy.
Right.
And she's like, I hope that's not a problem. And I was like, I mean, I don't know how I feel about that, right? And she's like, well, think about it this way. She's like, I'll get money off of this. You're getting money how you're getting money. We'll put it together and we'll be good, right? And I was like, bet, you can use the room. So the first John comes, and I go, she's like, just hide in the bathroom. So I'm like, all right. So so I'm sitting in the bathroom with the gun on my lap, and I'm smoking meth. And I'm just listening to this girl that's about to be my girlfriend get piped, right? And I'm like, this is so fucked up. So I think it was like the third call she did, but he gets up and he's like, I need to use the bathroom.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what if he needs the bathroom?
Yeah, right? So he's like, I need to use the bathroom. And I'm like, oh shit, like what am I gonna do? Like I run, I go behind the shower and close the curtain, right? But she jumps off the bed, and she's like, no, you can't. The bathroom's broken, whatever, right? So the dude's like, all right, whatever. This is fucking weird. I'm out of here, right? So he leaves, whatever. So she's whatever. A couple days go by, and we're chilling, and she's like, I really need to get back to my apartment. And I was like, you have an apartment? I've been paying for a hotel room for like a week at a time, and you got an apartment? Like, what the fuck? And she's like, yeah, I don't really like to do it out of my apartment though. And like, she's like, you can come stay with me. And I was like, all right, word. But she's like, a couple other people stay with me too, right? And mind you, my brother introduced me to her. So I get there, and my brother's staying there, and this guy James is staying there, right? And it's a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's right downtown. So we're all in there now, and it's like, it turned into chaos because I had free range now because I'm dating the girl whose apartment it is. So I'm running it like it's like I'm the boss of everybody there, you know what I mean? And it's my brother also. So it just, I don't know, it put a battery in my back, and like kind of like made me feel like I was bigger, I guess, right? Just made me want to go harder. So she had a lot of traffic through there though. So I started selling a lot of powder there. And like I'm selling like I guess not a lot of powder. I'm selling like a half ounce a day, you know? So I'm making like $1,100 a day there. And then she's doing her thing and she's charging like $200 a call, doing 3-4 calls a day, right? Like, so we're making a decent amount of money. And she calls me the one day, right? And or texts me anyways, and she's like, "Hey, I'm about to bring this guy back from the bar," right? She's like, he has a big wad of money on him and a big chain. And I was like, "Oh yeah." I took that as, I thought, doesn't that sound like she's trying to set him up?
Yeah.
Like,
Sounds
why
like she
tell
wants
me
to
that,
rob
right?
him.
Yeah. So she's like, make sure that like you're hidden when he comes, like don't come out, right? So I'm like, okay, she want me to rob him. I'm like, we used the one bedroom. So my brother slept on the couch and this James guy slept on the other little couch. So we had our bedroom and then the second bedroom was like her walk-in closet basically. I had like these racks that you build just full of clothes, right? So I go in there and I'm sitting in there behind this rack of clothes and I'm texting my brother, right? And I'm like, yo, I need you to come here right now. Like, come through the window, right? So, because it was a ground floor apartment. So the back window, it was like a giant window. Plus, it had this thing, it had one of those storm gates on it. You could pull it down over the window, which that was dope. So we kind of used that as a door instead of going to the front secure entrance, right? Because it was like an apartment. So I tell my brother coming through the window. So my brother comes in and he brings some girl with him too. Never forget that. My brother was always dumb like that. Like, we're gonna rob somebody and you bring a random girl that you're with. You know what I mean? Like, it just. So anyways, so my brother comes in and we shut all the. They had Vanessa had come in with this guy and I never seen him once though, right? And they're in the bedroom, whatever. So we shut off all the lights. I locked the door. You know, I pull that storm thing down over the window. Like, this guy ain't getting out, right? Mind you, I hadn't seen him yet. So I had this imitation gun. I didn't have the little 22 anymore, right? I had this fake gun, and my brother had a knife, and we go, and I go to kick the bedroom door. Or actually, at first I tried to open it because I thought she wanted us to rob him, so I thought the door would be unlocked, right? So I go to open it. So that kind of tipped this guy off, right? Because you hear it, the door, somebody's trying to open it, whatever. So I go to kick the door open, right? And the door doesn't kick open on the first kick. So I'm like, fuck. So my brother kicks the door open, right? And this guy's already like half up, pants almost on, you know? This guy was like 6'4", just this giant Jamaican guy. Because the farmers come into town to, like, they come to around here to the farm areas to work, right? And they'll come from Jamaica and stuff, like, and then they always come into town on payday, right? Partying and buy groceries, whatever. So this guy, he was fucking massive, bro. I point the gun at him, right? Mind you, it's not a real gun. This guy doesn't give a fuck. He football bulldozes me right through me, bro. Puts me, so the wall, like the hallway's like real small, right? Narrow. So this guy had hit me so hard, bro. I went through the fucking drywall. Like, boom, I hit the wall, put a big crater in the drywall. I dropped the little fake gun, right? This guy picks it. My brother doesn't even try to help me. He runs into the room to get this guy's side bag, right? Now, Vanessa's freaking out on us too. She's like, what the fuck, right? This guy picks the gun up. No hesitation at all, bro. If it was real, I'd be dead. No hesitation at all. Click, 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 click. I'm like, what the fuck, right? Now this guy's screaming though. He's like, call the police. Like, can barely speak English, right? He runs to the front door. It's locked though. So he goes to just open it and it doesn't open. Well, Vanessa's right behind him. This guy grabs Vanessa in a headlock, puts the fake gun to her head, and backs into the closet, the hallway closet. So now I'm like, oh, fuck, what am I going to do, right? I pick up the knife. I look over, my brother's going to fucking cut out the window. He has the side bag, and he's going to leave with this girl. I'm like, yo, you get the fuck back here or I'll stab you, bro. What the fuck? He's got my girlfriend. Like, you know? So this guy's like got her in a headlock. She's like, he's choking me type thing. So my brother like runs up like he's going to punch him. So the guy turns to him, and I stabbed him in the shoulder, right? Boom. He lets go of Vanessa. I'm like, okay, now we can cut. Fuck this. So we cut out the window, right? We're running. We get a couple blocks away, right? I ditch my sweater, whatever. Well, I'm like, yo, what we get, bro? What we get? He's like, opens the thing. He's like, there's $120 in the side bag, bro. I'm like, no, you're lying. He's like, yeah, I'm so mad. I grabbed this guy's passport, rip it, throw it in the fucking sewer. I'm like, fuck, right? I'm like, well, at least we got the chain, right? So I go to get on my phone. I'm like, yo, where the fuck's my phone, bro? What the fuck? So I'm like, yo, I'm tripping. I'm like, oh shit. I knew my buddy JJ just lived a couple blocks away, and I knew he had an iPad so I could go on find my iPhone, right? So my brother's like, I'm going to cut to Crashes and get this chain checked out, right? And I was like, all right, cool. I'll meet you there. So I go to my buddy JJ's. I knock on his door. I tell him what happened, right? He's like, yeah, get the fuck in here, right? I check my thing. Mind you, like probably like half an hour, 45 minutes has gone by. My phone is going up the fucking street towards the police station. I'm like, oh no. So I hit erase all, right? Because you can erase the iPhone from Find My iCloud or from Find My iPhone, right? So I hit erase all. Boom. I'm tripping. I'm like, fuck. So now I call my buddy Ben. I'm like, yo, listen, I need you to do me a big favor. I need you to go walk by my apartment, and like, if there's no cops there, I need you to go up and see what's up, right? So Ben goes by the apartment, calls me back. He's like, bro, there's like the crime scene van is there, bro. Like, I'm like, what? Like, now in my head, I'm like, did I kill this guy? Like, oh no,
Yes,
right?
it's robbery and you stabbed him.
Right? So I'm like, oh fuck. So couple hours go by, I'm at JJ's. I go over to my friend Ann's, who she's like became like my best friend, right? So I go over to her house and I'm like, hey, like, did Andrew tell you what happened? She's like, Vanessa's been calling my phone, da da da. I'm like, oh shit, let me call her, right? So I call Vanessa, I'm like, hey, like, what the fuck? And she's like, what the fuck yourself? Like, what are you doing, right? She's like, you guys didn't even get the money. It was in his pants. And I was like, oh no, this guy had a couple grand in his pants, right? And my brother just grabbed the side bag and the chain. And she's like, but what the fuck? Like, you weren't even supposed to do that. And I was like, yo, I thought that you wanted me to, like, why would you tell me he had a big chain and money then, you know? And she's like, I was just letting you know, da da da. And I was like, okay, so what's up with the cops? And she's like, well, they have no idea who it was. Like, you know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, but they got my phone. And she's like, I know. She's like, you dropped it. They picked it up. And she's like, you're a dumbass. Your background is me and you on the background. So they knew I had something to do with it, but they can't prove it, right? So they end up, like, the cops left and stuff. They took this guy to the hospital, whatever. Like, I never got charged for it or anything, you know? Like, thank fuck. But hopefully the statue's up on that. But no, I don't even think the guy's from Canada or like, I don't know. He never pressed charges anyways. But that was just like, I don't know. That really got me into, like, I felt big off of that for some reason, because even though we fucked up and it was dumb as shit, we never got no money or nothing. Like, I was like, all right, at least I know that, like, I can handle myself in a situation. Like, I'm not going to bitch out like my brother, you know what I mean? And I called my Uncle Lee, and I didn't know how big of a drug dealer he was at this time, right? So I call him and I'm like, hey, can I come stay with you? Like, I just fucked up at Vanessa's, da da da. And he just lived a couple blocks away too. Like, this is all like downtown Brantford-ish, you know? So I go and stay with my uncle, and he's like, this is perfect anyways. Cause he's like, people keep stealing stuff from my house. Like, every time I go to work, because my uncle worked at a galvanizing plant for a while, right? So like they galvanized metal. So every time he went to work, people would be breaking into the house and stuff like that. Like, he had a lot of stuff, right? If it was brand new and you came to him, it doesn't matter what it is, he's gonna take it and give you something for it, you know? So I move in with him, and he has like 3 different shotguns, right? And he's like, pick one. And I was like, yeah, for real? And I was like, yeah. So I could send you pictures of like the police thing, you know, when the picture they put up from the arrest and stuff. And it's like of all my guns that they found. And so I picked this shotgun, and it's a Remington Sportsman semi-automatic, right? So, and it's nice. I had like engraving of like duck pond and like a dog catching a duck on the lower receiver. And so I'm like, okay. So I cut this thing down, right? And now this thing's with me constantly, 24/7. This thing's always with me. So my uncle's like, here, you're going to work for me too. And he gives me like a half ounce of meth, right? And he's like, but don't fuck this up, right? And so boom, I start selling for him and stuff. And one day he's like, I got to go meet my plug. Come for a ride with me. So we go to Hamilton and we meet his plug. And his plug was working with guys from the cartel, right? Well, that's what he told us anyways. I never met no guys like that or anything. But like, this guy, he gave my uncle 2 bricks, like 2 keys of meth, right? 2,000 grams. And I was like, oh shit, like, you're actually like pushing weight, you know? Like, I didn't realize that. And I was like, well, yo, I know this guy who can get like a lot of down. I was like, do you want to get into that? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And I regret it, because this is the downfall of everything. So I linked my uncle and Derek up. And Derek didn't like my uncle at all, because my uncle could see through Derek's bullshit, because I had him all fucked up from the But when he was like normal, you know, he kind of used me like an errand boy, kind of, but in a way that he manipulated me to it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really catch on because he'd be giving me money or he'd give me brand new shoes. I'd show up. He'd give me like a big speaker that I can plug a microphone into because, like I said, I was rapping at the time. He would just like buy me with like ways like that, right? And my uncle seen through it, and Derek knew that, so they didn't really like each other. So I just started getting it off of him and bringing it to my uncle, right? Well, I never thought my uncle would ever do it, right? My uncle did the meth, but not like a lot. He just kind of did it to stay up and go to work, whatever. Well, my uncle quit his job, and he was lying to me the whole time, though, because I'm like, bro, you're really not doing down. And he's like, no, no. And like they would go downstairs and do it. Well, he was dating this girl, and I always tried to, like, I always told him, like, yo, it's fucked up, bro. You're 46 and she's 19, bro. Like, I know that it's legal, but that's fucked up, bro. Like, you know, I always told him, I'm like, yo, she's gonna, like, she's stealing from you. She's whatever. And, like, he put so much trust in her. And come to find out, like, she was the downfall. So one morning, I had the upstairs on my uncle. So one morning he texts me and he's like, hey, come down right now and bring something, like meaning the gun, right? So I grabbed that shotgun and I had put slugs in it. And I come down and there's these crackheads there, Brandy and Buckshot, right? That was, dude's name was Buckshot and her name's Brandy. And they were like boosters too, right? So they would steal like thousands of dollars worth of, like, they go to any store, you know, they get like sound bars and subs or like brand new clothes, whatever, right? Like their groceries and shit. And they would always bring it to my uncle. Well, my uncle had spotted them like $800 worth of powder, right? And they were arguing with him, trying to say that they paid him and he ripped them off and all that. And Brandy had brought her brother with her. And her brother's a giant native guy, right? Like he was massive and just fat, but still massive, you know? And when she brought her brother, like I've seen it enough at other houses, like when she brought her brother, they're either trying to rob you or like it's going to be a confrontation, you know? And my uncle knew that too. So that's why he told me to bring the thing down. So I calmed down, right? And I'm like, it's a semi-automatic, so you can't cock it or anything. So I made sure that I had a shell ready to push in so they could hear the sound, right? So I come down and I walk through the kitchen and I load a shell in and they kind of look at me, right? And I had been on some bullshit in the city at this point, like robbing people, pistol whipping people, you know, just like tons of shit. They knew that like I wasn't fucking around, right? So anyways, so I do that and the whole tone kind of changes, right? And she's like, I'll be back with your money later, da da da. She tells her brother to leave, like, you know, and I'm like, what the fuck? So my uncle's sitting at the table though, and he has tinfoil with burnt down on it because he had just gotten spun out at this point. So he forgot to hide it when I came down, right? And I'm like, yo, what the fuck is that? And he's like, oh, I just tried it, da da da, right? So I'm mad. So I set my shotgun down, and it's at the bottom of the stairs, kind of beside the door, right? And I'm like, fuck you, right? And I go upstairs, and maybe an hour or two goes by, and my buddy Nathan comes over. He wanted some shit from me. So I come downstairs, and I'm like, hey. I'm like, yo, Shauna, where's Lee? And she's like, oh, he's in the bathroom. I think he's jerking off. And I was like, what? That's the weirdest thing ever. So I go knock on the door, right? He's not answering me. I'm like, what the fuck, right? So I'm like, yo, Lee. So I go to bust the door open. The bathroom's really small. My uncle was fat, right? So when I get the door open a little bit, but he's blocking it, right? So he's sitting on the toilet, butt naked, slumped over with his head on the wall, like fucking purple, bro. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm trying to get the door open. I can't get the door open. So I'm freaking out. I'm telling the girl that was upstairs with me, I'm like, call the ambulance, right? So I run into his room and I had given him this hatchet, right? So I'm holding the bathroom door and I'm like holding my weight backwards so the door's not smashing into him. And mind you, I'm all fucked up on drugs, right? And I hack through the door, right? And I rip the top off of the bathroom door and I get in there and I'm like, oh, bring me Narcan, right? So all he had was one nose spray Narcan in the house, right? I never used Narcan at this point, and I didn't know how to use it, so I thought I had to prime it, and I shot it off. Boom, not in his nose, because I thought I had to prime it, right? So I'm like, fuck. I'm like, yo, give me more Narcan. And she's like, that's all that's there. I'm like, yo, call an ambulance. So like, he's in my arms, right? And he's like purple, and he died in my arms, right? and it's kind of my fault because like I brought the down around. I fucked the, it's just kind of my fault. So my bad. Um, so anyways, so the ambulance comes, right, and I had forgot to hide that shotgun, right. I wasn't thinking about it because it was still at the bottom of the stairs, right.
Yeah, I have
And
a question for you. Like,
yeah,
I thought like there were no guns, or there it's illegal to have guns in Canada, but there's apparently a lot of guns.
your long guns are legal, handguns are illegal, and automatics. But you like for hunting, long guns like rifles,
Yeah,
shotguns, those are legal. But you got to have a license as well, obviously, right?
yeah, but you've still had several. You've still mentioned several
Oh, they're
guns.
so easy to get, bro. They're
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not hard to get at all. Um, so upstairs on my bed, I literally a couple nights before this guy, I call him Google because anytime you ask him a question, he knows it, right? So we called him Google. He had come over to my house and he had this big tote, like a laundry tote, and it was full of boxes of bullets. And then there was a 222 rifle. Not everybody thinks I'm talking about a little 22. It's a hunting rifle. It's basically for like gophers, right? It's called a
Oh, okay.
222. It's one step below a 223, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, give me $300, you can have it all. And I was like, what? So I had 2,200 bullets in this thing, like different types of bullets. And there was like probably 18 different random clips for guns in the laundry tote. And then there was the 222, right? And my uncle, he had always, because I loved guns, so he all the two guns he had let me keep upstairs in my room as well. So I had this 22 Ithaca lever action single shot. It was smaller than a Red Ryder BB gun by like this much, and just naturally, it's like a trainer rifle for kids. You know what I mean? So I had that on my bed. I had the 222 on my bed. My other shotgun was at the bottom of the stairs, and then there was a 12 gauge break barrel Cooey also sitting on my bed, right? Because it's like so fucked how it happened. I don't know why I had them all out, and then I had the total bullets sitting beside my bed too, because I was just like playing with them all night. You know what I mean? And so when the ambulance had come in, they noticed the shotgun at the bottom of the stairs, right? And they're like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess that's not completely illegal, but it's still illegal to not have it stored in a locked box. So that's an automatic call the cops right there. Plus, they're there for an overdose. Well, I also didn't shut the living room TV off, which was like, it was like a 55-inch TV, and half of it was the cameras that pointed to the rooms in the house, and the other half was the cameras that were around the house. Because my uncle had there was $170,000 worth of stolen property recovered from his house because he would just buy everything from people. The house was packed, right?
Right.
So they're looking around. There's like brand new boxes of DeWalt tools with the banding still around them. You know what I mean? There was a fucking dirt compactor in the living room, like a giant from a construction site, like a giant dirt compactor, like just so much random shit. So the paramedic puts two and two together, right? Calls the cops, like calls them in. So there's a Good Samaritan Act in Canada. I don't know if there is in the States too, but in Canada, it's called the Good Samaritan Act. If you call for an overdose, no matter what is there, they have to let you go. They could put a warrant out for you when you leave, but they have to let you go because too many people were not calling paramedics and letting people die because they were scared of what would happen when the police or the paramedics showed up, right? So they
Right.
passed this law. So
Makes sense.
yeah, right. So the cops come and they get our names and whatever, and they let us go. Well, I went across the road to this girl I used to sell rock to. I went across the road and sat at her house so I could see whatever. Well, the girl that I was with that I got to call the ambulance, I'm like, hey Christina, I'm like, you should. It's been a couple hours. You should go over to the house for me and see what's up, right? Like, so she goes. She never comes back. like like an hour or two later, I'm like, where the fuck is Christina, right? I'm like, yo, I'm gonna go like check, I'm like, maybe she's in the house stealing shit, because I'm all
Right.
tweaked out too. So I'm walking up my driveway. You couldn't use the front door in the house. Me and my uncle had drilled a hole through the floor into the floor joist and dropped a piece of rebar in it. So that door is not coming open. You know what I mean? So you had to use the side door, which my bedroom window overlooked. I don't know how many times I hung out that window with a gun when people were at the door. And so I'm walking up to the door, right? And I go to knock on my own fucking door for some reason. And the cop opens it. Boom. He's like, do you live here? And I was like, yeah. Dumbest thing I ever said. I'm like, yeah.
Right.
He goes, you're under arrest for possession of unauthorized firearms. I'm like, I had a second where I could have turned and ran, but I'll tell you one thing. Every time I've been arrested, I don't know why, I've never ran once in my life. It's always in my head. I'm always like, I guess I'm going to jail now. Like every time I've been arrested, it's for something I did. Like I know that I did it. You know what I mean? Right. So I'm like, whatever. I'll just go to jail for it. You know? So, so he's arresting me, and my son's mom is pregnant at the time with my second son, right? So she starts calling, and I'm like, oh fuck. I'm like, can I answer that, please? And he's like, you know what? You didn't try and run. Like I seen it in your face. You thought about it. He's like, I'll let you answer it. So I answer. He answers it for me, puts it on speaker. I'm like, hey, I'm getting arrested right now. Like I'm going to jail. She starts freaking out. Whatever. He hangs up. They take me to jail. Well, I'm so scared now because I'm like, not just the guns. I'm like, my uncle has like, I think there was like a 9-pack, which is 9 ounces of down in the safe. There was like 18 ounces of crystal ice house, and he had like $70,000 cash. So I'm like, oh no, like, but his girlfriend, what I later found out, the Shauna girl, and it came up in court that this is the third like death that's happened around her, right? What she did, my uncle didn't do needles. She shot him up with a hot shot, which is down in the needle. And I think what I think anyways is that he was doing ice like in needles on the low and didn't tell me. So I think that's how she got him to do it. But there was down. She killed him, right? And while I was in the bathroom, he was dying in my arms. She was in the bedroom robbing the safe. So she took everything. So there was like the only drug charges I got from there was like I think 8 grams of powder I had in my room, you know, and then all the gun charges. So so I'm in court and I go for let me see if I can pull this picture up. And I go for bail the first time, right? And the judge is like, she sees this picture and she's like, Mr. McEwen, this is the most disturbing thing I've ever seen. Your bail is denied on all 3 treasury grounds. You know what that is?
No.
A danger to the public, a danger to yourself, and a danger to the courts. That's the 3 treasury grounds that they base it off of when you go for bail, right? So she denies me on all 3. So my long rifle, it has "say goodbye" written on the side of it.
Right.
I don't know why I did that. That's what I had sitting on my bed when they arrested me. So I'm like, I don't know why I wrote "say goodbye" down the side of it. You know what I mean? But yeah, so she's like, Mr. McEwen, that's so disturbing. Denies my bail. So I wait for 6 months, right? Mind you, when they were taking my uncle out on the stretcher, I heard the paramedics say we got a pulse. So I thought my uncle was still alive, right? So I'm in jail for like a week at this point. I don't know that he had died in my arms at this point yet, right? So I'm in for about a week, and I finally get on the phone with my dad, and I'm like, hey, you got to get a hold of Lee. How's he doing? He's got to get me out of this, right? My dad's like, buddy, Lee died. And I was like, he's like, he died on the way to the hospital. So I'm like, fuck. I'm like, so like the last breaths he took were like in my arms, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh fuck, right? So I go for my first appearance, and my lawyer's like, he's like, listen, I got your screening and disclosure, and they're asking for 10 years. And I was like, oh fuck. My heart started beating, right? I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, other than the 5 days I did, I'm like, this is the first time I ever been to adult jail. You know what I mean?
Right.
And our Brantford jail had closed. So I got sent to Maplehurst, which is in Milton. And that's where like all the Toronto guys, all the gang guys go and shit. So like now I'm in like big boy jail, you know? And I'm like, what am I going to do? Right. And I'm like, I got to try and get a bail, go on a run. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I got to go to a different country, you know? Like, I'm like, what am I going to do? My second son's about to be born. Like, I'm like, this is a mess, right? Because now I'm like, I'm starting to sober up a little bit, right? So I'm in for about a month, and I get a bail hearing, and my second bail hearing, and they deny me again. So I'm like, oh, fuck. So in Canada, every 90 days, you can go for a bail hearing, right?
Right.
So I wait another 90 days, and like I told you, my grandmother had sold her house like 6-7 months prior to this, right? So she agreed to be my surety, and my lawyer's like, how much are you willing to put up? I got this lawyer. Fuck this guy. His name's Gabriel Grostein, right? I got him. He's out of Toronto, supposed to be like a top lawyer, right? So the only thing this guy did was he did get me a bail. That's all he did. Other than that, he took 11 grand from me and my grandma and fucked me. So, so my lawyer asked my grandma, how much money are you willing to put up? My grandma tells him, well, I have 100,000 in the bank right now. So he puts down 100,000. So all you have to do in Canada though is prove that you have the income. And if I fuck up, you only have to pay 10%. So it'd be
Right.
10 grand that she would have to pay, right? So they won't do it with one surety. So my sister and my son's mom agree to be a surety. So my grandma puts up 99,000 and they both put up 500, right? Well, they give me a house arrest bail. I'm out for about 8 hours. I get an ounce of powder. My buddy comes to me with a Glock 18 and I buy it, right? So yeah, right? I'm out for like 8 hours. So now I'm at my baby mom's house and I'm like on house arrest there. She's about to have my second son. My first son's there. I got a gun. I got powder. It's like 4 a.m. and we're in bed and boom, boom, boom. Somebody's knocking on the door. And we're like, what the fuck? Because we were living in Slovak, which is like the hood of the hood in Brantford, you know? So it's like not a good building. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I grabbed the gun, right? And me and her walk to the door and I'm like, she looks through the peephole and she's like, there's 4 cops out there. And I'm like, oh shit, right? So boom, I stick the gun in the closet, right? And I open it and I'm like, hello? I'm like, they're like, Dalton McEwen? And I was like, yeah, like I'm on house arrest. I'm where I'm supposed. They're like, we're just doing a residence check. And I was like, at 4 a.m, like I have kids here, man. And they're like, we're doing a residence check, you know, be ready. And boom, so I close the door and like they're basically telling me like, we're just gonna randomly show up here whenever, right? And I'm like, I look at my baby mom, I'm like, sorry, I'm like, I gotta go, right? So the next morning, boom, I get a hotel room. Well, my baby mom is like, she's petty. Like when she feels hurt, she's gonna hurt you 10 times worse. So I'm not telling her where I am, right? And I'm chopping out of this hotel now. A couple of weeks go by, and I got people in this hotel room with me every day. And thankfully, she's so petty that she called me and was like, have fun in jail. And I was like, what? And she's like, have fun in jail. And I was like, I hang up. I look at my boy Isaac and I'm like, I got to go. She called the cops. She found out where I am. What she did was, because I wouldn't put nothing in my name, right? But I'm dumb and I use my grandma's name. My grandma will do anything for me, right? So I got her to get the hotel rooms in her name. Well, what my son's mom did was she called every hotel asking if somebody under my grandma's name was staying there. And she found the hotel, right? So she didn't call me first. Like I would have totally went to jail, right? So I cut out. My boy stays there. I start going into like trap houses again now, right? I'm like, fuck it. So my boy calls me and he's like, oh, the cops just left. He's like, they were definitely here for you. And I was like, oh my God. He's like, there was this girl, Candace. And he's like, Candace ratted you out and said that you were here. And I was like, yo, you fucking bitch. Like I was letting her stay there for free, giving her drugs. Like, you know what I mean? And I was like, these junkies, man. So, but I'm a junkie at myself at the time too, right? So anyways, fast forward, like I start staying with this Tasha girl and we're living in this guy Frank's house and he's like this old guy. He claims to have done 20 years for robbing banks, but I don't know. I used to give him rock to stay there and he'd get scared if people would come there on like some bullshit. And like, you know, I don't think he really did 20 years. So anyways, I'm staying there for a while and I like take this house over. Like this is like my house now, you know, that's when my face got cut. And somebody came in the one day and they wanted down and all I had was powder, right? So Parker decides to rob me. So I'm turning around, scaling some stuff up, and I turn around and he has this knife out. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck? So like I kind of back up a little bit, right? And he swipes at me as I'm moving back and he like just caught my face a little bit, you know what I mean? So I'm like, what the fuck? So he robs me, whatever. About 2 days later, the cops show up there, right? But there's a secure entrance in this place too. It's like a giant house that was turned into a bunch of different apartments. So the very front door locks, right? You gotta like one of the tenants have to open it, and then it goes into the apartments, right? So the cops are out there knocking on the door, and I'm like kind of looking through the window. I'm like, oh, what the fuck? I'm like, yo, there's like 6 cops out there, right? So this kid I had staying with us, Tristan, he's like, yo, let me go out and talk to them, right? And I was like, all right, cool, right? He's like, I don't have no warrants or nothing. So boom, so he goes out and he comes back like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later and he's like, they're here for you. And I was like, yo, did you I'm like, did you tell them I was here? And he's like, no, bro, like, but they're here for you. And I was
Right.
like, fuck. I'm like, they're probably one at the back door. I can't check out the back door. There's no window or nothing, right? So I'm like, fuck, they're probably at the back door. I go and I hide in the coat closet, and I have this brake barrel 20 gauge, right? So I'm sitting there with this brake barrel 20 gauge, and in my brain, I'm looking at the 10 years, right? So I'm like, fuck it. I'm like, I'm either shooting myself or shooting the cop. Like, that's what I'm 100% thinking while I'm sitting in this coat closet. I have the hammer cocked, everything. I'm sitting there like this for a little bit. Swear on my life. Sitting there like this for a little bit. And I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? My plug calls me. My phone starts ringing. I'm like, I answer. He's like, yo, I'm coming through to bring that. I'm like, yo, don't come, don't come, don't come. He's like, what? Why are you whispering? I'm like, bro, there's cops everywhere. He's like, yo, you need to get out of there and I'll meet up with you later. He's like, go to Rodden Street. Because that was another house, but he ran it, right?
Well, you guys are fucking brazen. I mean, if I heard that the cops are there, I would be like, okay, listen, bro, get out and meet me. I'd be like, yeah, we're done.
Right? Never call me again.
Yeah.
No, this guy watched my back for like, bro, I don't want to say his name because he's still out here, but he did 12 years for somebody tried to rob his friend and he shot the guy, right? So like he's like a certified guy. He's like, bro, he's like a midget. I swear to God, not an actual midget, but he's like 5'3", bro. But his arms are like this fucking big. Like he's just swole, right? This is crazy little fucker. So anyways, I'm in this closet for like a good like hour, right? And Tristan comes in, he's like, bro, they're leaving. They're leaving. And I was like, yeah? So I'm like, yo, Frank, I'm like, I'll give you $1 right now. You need to drive me to Rodden Street. He's like, okay. I'm like, back the car up to the back door. I'll come down the stairs with a mask on. Cause mind you, this was COVID had just hit right before I got that bail for the house arrest. COVID had just hit. So now you're allowed to walk around with a mask on and it's not weird, right?
Right.
So I put a mask on. Frank backs up to the back door. I get in the car. I'm like laying on the back seat, right? He drives me to this house on Rodden Street. I sneak in the house, whatever. Tasha's with me. She's like, this is a rooming house, right? And everybody in there does drugs. Nobody sells drugs there. Everybody does them though, right? So she brings me into this room, the biggest room. And it's, this guy, his name was John Wayne. I swear to God, like, couldn't get any more. Like, that's clearly a made up name, but like, you really picked John Wayne, bro. Like,
right.
you know? But mine was no better. My trap name was Andy Jacobs. That's what got me fucked when I got pulled over, but I'm getting to that. So I get in this room and it's John Wayne and his girl, right? And what's her name? I think her name was Brittany. And it started with a B for sure. And they're like, who the fuck is this? You know? And Tasha's like, Shorty said he's coming here, he's staying here. Whatever. Oh, I didn't mean to say his name, but whatever. So she's like, Shorty said he's coming.
Sounds like a nickname anyway.
Yeah, it is, right? There's a million Shorties. Fuck it.
Right.
I know he's gonna watch this and be like, motherfucker, you know. But so yeah, so she's like, Shorty said that he could stay here. He needs to lay low. Like, so I'm like, listen, I'm gonna trap out of this room, but you're gonna meet the people in the kitchen for me. Like, nobody can know that I'm here, right? And they're all like, okay, cool. I'm like, Shorty's gonna pay you. So Shorty comes through a couple hours later, and he's like, yo. He's like, respect for the heads up, bro. He's like, you know how many people wouldn't even answer my call and just let me come there, like, you know? So he's like, boom, here. And he gives me a ball, which is 3.5 grams of powder. He's like, you don't owe me for that, whatever. That's just like a little gift for that, right? He's like, respect, bro. So he's like, this is your house now. Like, run it how you want to run it, right? And I was like, all right, respect. So he leaves, and I think it lasted maybe 3 hours of me not letting people know that I was there. So I'm sitting in there with like bandanas on my face or a mask on my face when people come to the door, and like John's being secretive. Eventually, I hear somebody's voice, and I'm like, that's my dog. So I run out in the kitchen, right? I'm like, yo, what's up, bro? And he's like, yo, this is your house now? I'm like, yo, this is my house now, right? So now everybody in town knows, right? Like, it did not last long. Well, my downfall was this Brittany girl that was staying with John. She, my brother was in jail at this time, right? And there was a point where I really wanted to try needles, right? Because I was just getting so bad into drugs, and I was like, I wanted to get higher, right? So I really wanted to try needles, but I was scared to do it myself. I was scared to hit myself. So my brother had put word out that like anybody that hits my brother with a needle, like, I'm gonna poke you. Like, that's just what it is. So nobody would do it for me, right? People were scared of my brother for a while before he got too bucketed out. And so this Brittany girl, she's like, yo, your brother's gonna kill me if I do that, da da da. And I was like, fuck my brother, what's he gonna do, right? I'll protect you. So boom, so she hits me. She gives me my first shot. And sure enough, she shoots me up. And then my dad shows up like 15 minutes later to buy powder, me, right? And my dad's like, what's going on with you? Because I'm like up, like I got all my clothes out of my bag, rearranging them. Like I'm super tweaking, right? The gun is like glued to my hand. Like I got this just cut shotgun just in my hand everywhere, pointing at everybody. You know what I mean? It was bad. So then I went on this crazy bender and I'm like, this is my house, right? Like, I don't care what happens. And I come in the one day and my stuff is gone, right? Like I had this little box that had a hinge and a padlock on it, right? Well, somebody had cut the padlock on my box and all my shit was gone. So everybody that was in the house, I brought them down to the basement, right? And I shot around over their head into the basement wall. Bow! And I'm like, yo, listen, I'm going up to the bathroom. I'm like, my shit better be back on the table when I get out of the bathroom, or I promise the next one's not missing. I'm like, nothing will happen, no repercussions. I need my shit back, you know? So it's like, I'm not starting from scratch again. At this point, I had called Shorty like 2 or 3 times and been like, yo, I need this spot. And he's like, bro, like you were doing what the fuck, you know? Because the needles were just, they were getting to me, right? I was like tweaking out and then I'd leave shit here, or I'd give somebody too much, or you know what I mean? I'd just do a bunch. Like it was just, I was getting really bad. So I go up to the bathroom and I come back and my money and half my drugs are back on the table, right? And so I'm like, and I know I told them that there was no repercussions, but I'm like, oh, who was it? And it turned out to be that guy, John Wayne, whose room that like it originally was, right? So I beat the fuck out of him with the gun. Boom, right? And I kicked him out of his own house. And that was a downfall for me because this guy called the cops. Not about that, but like he just said that I was staying there, right? So
Right. Well, they're looking for you anyway, so that's all he has to say.
exactly, right? So I'm sitting in the room the one day and I have this sound bar and it's just blaring. And all of a sudden I see like blue and red lights like through the windows and shit. And I'm like, oh no, right? Oh fuck. They never came to the door, bro. This was the most fucked up thing ever. They sat out front of the house with the lights flashing for like an hour. Never came back, right? Or never came to the door. They left. That same night, I'm like, fuck this. I'm getting all my shit out of here. My best friend, Anne, she wasn't like into drugs and stuff, right? Her house was like a clean, if you needed to get away, you would go to her house, you know? Like just get away from the drug scene and stuff. So I call Anne and I'm like, listen, I need to come live with you for a bit. I'm going to try and clean up, whatever, right? I'm just spinning some bullshit. I had no intentions of cleaning up, but I needed to get out of there, right? So I'm like, I'm bringing all my stuff. So I bring 2 loads of stuff to her house and I'm there. And it's like maybe 1:30 in the morning and I'm trying to come down. And I don't really smoke weed at this point, but I had one of those weed pens, right? The shatter pens that you just smoke and you could recharge them and stuff. You know what I'm talking about? So I can't find it. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, convince myself that I need that to go to sleep, right? And I'm like, I left it at the trap. And I'm like, it's only like 5 blocks away. I'm like, I'm going to ride my bike there and go get it. And she's like, don't. Like, just don't. And I was like, Ann, I'll be fine. I'll be right back. She's like, please don't go.
What did you really do with it?
Pardon?
Where was it?
I will tell you because it's so fucked. So I'm like, I need this thing. So I have this Canada Goose coat, right? And I was so dumb. I cut a slit in this thing so I could put the sawed-off shotgun in it, right? And so there's always feathers popping out my coat and shit. So I put the gun in there, and I had this big Smith & Wesson knife, and I put it in my back, right? And this gun I have a picture of it too. It was a little 22 rifle that had a mini banana clip in it, 7 shots, and you had to cock the bolt on it. And I cut it down to about this big, to the point where when I was about to, before I decided if I was going to go to trial, my lawyer had it sent away to see if it would even fire because it was a rifle and I cut it down to like a fucking handgun size, right?
Right.
So I have that with me and it's a 22. So I have my side bag and I have 3 phones, 100 extra bullets in the bag, and like I think like 9 grams of meth, right? So because I was waiting to re-up. Shorty wasn't answering me all night, so it's a good thing because I didn't have no powder. So I get on the bike and Tasha's like, all right, I'm coming with you then. So I'm like, all right, cool. So we start riding, right? And there's a beer store and then a train bridge, and then you would turn right, and at the end of that street you can see the house that we're going to, right? So we get to the beer store And as I'm cutting through the parking lot, a fucking cop drives by. Turns out to be the cop he was driving around that area, right? Waiting to see if I showed up. So he drives by. I see him bust a Yui. I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm like, Tash, we got to go. So I start boogieing, right? But I'm on a pedal bike. So he pulls up like alongside of us, shines that little light on me. And he's like, hey, I noticed that you don't have a light on your bicycle. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, it's illegal to ride a bicycle at night without a light on it. And I was like, what the fuck? So I'm sitting there now, like, I'm sitting on the seat of the bike and I'm like, oh, fuck. And he's like, what's your name? And I was like, Andy Jacobs. And he's like, okay. So he runs it. He's like, you've never been pulled over, never ever talked to the cops in your life. Like nothing comes up. It's too clean. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you can just tell that I'm a drug addict. Like at this point, there's no way that I've never had a run in with the cops. That's what he's thinking, right? So we go back and forth for a good 45 minutes, and that's one of my charges is lying to a peace officer or whatever.
Right.
And we go back and forth. I keep telling him different names. I'm switching names now. I'm switching birth dates, and then 2 more cop cars pull up, right? And I'm like, oh fuck. Well, this female cop gets out, and she goes, that's Dalton McEwen. She goes, I bet the forearm tattoo says I'll take the beauty of chaos over ugly perfection. And I'm like, oh no, this fucking bitch, right? I'm like, oh fuck. So they're like, get off the bike, because I've just been sitting there on the bike the whole time talking to him. He's on the road. So they come up now. They're like, get off the bike. Boom. So I get off the bike. I stand up. They arrest me. They grab that. I had my coat over my side bag, right? So they undo my coat. Haven't found the shotgun yet. They're so dumb. So which is in the side of my coat. So they reach in, they pull my side bag out, right? Take it off. They take my phones out. They throw it on the ground, whatever. Does my phone not start ringing? Shorty pops up on the thing. He goes, you want to answer that? I said, I don't know who that is. So they find the bullets in my bag, right? They pull the little ice. They're like, oh, okay, we got something. They find the bullets in the bag and they go, do you have a weapon on you? Like now they're screaming at me, right? Like, you got a weapon on you? You got a weapon on you? Mind you, every time I've been arrested with a gun, it was the same fucking officer. Same officer. Tell me how that's so fucked, like the universe just putting some karma on me or something. But so they're like, do you have a gun? Do you have a weapon? Da da da. And I'm like, fuck it. They're going to find it, right? I'm like, I'm already in cuffs. I'm like, yeah, there's a gun in my coat. And he's like, what? Because he was just in my coat to get the side bag, right? So he's like, what the fuck? So he pulls it out, right? He's like, is it loaded? Is it loaded? I said, yeah, and the safety's not on either. I don't keep the safety on. So now they're like handling like this. They pull the bolt back. They're like, there's one in the head, like da-da-da. They pull the little clip out. They're like, the clip's full. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What do you need this for? Da-da-da. And I was like, I just need it, right? So they're like, you have any more weapons? I'm like, there's like a 12-inch knife in my back. So they pull the knife out. They're like, what the fuck? They put me in the cop car. They're like, you're supposed to be on house arrest right now. Like, where are you even going? They're trying to ask me where I'm going. I'm like, oh, I was just going for a bike ride, right? Even though they know that that's the house, I'm like, oh, I'm just going for a bike ride. So they take me to the police station, whatever. They process me. I get sent back to Maplehurst, right? And so now I'm on range and I'm talking to my lawyer, and he's like, you're so fucking dumb, kid. He's like, I hope you understand. Like, he's like, you're probably looking at like 15, 17 years now. That's what their first offer is going to be for you. And I was like, fuck, right? He's like, why? Like, why? What's wrong with you? He's like, I'm going to do the best I can. He's like, these first charges, though, I really need to talk to you. He's like, you can say that your uncle forced you to keep those guns in your room and kept you high on drugs. He's like, I understand you want to honor his memory, da-da-da. But he's like, your name is nowhere on the lease of that house. You were just an occupant in the house. They never seen the guns in your hands. He's like, and you're the one that called 911 for the ambulance, right? Even though it was the girl with me, but whatever. He's like, and you're the one that called 911. And he's like, I really think that you should say that he forced you to keep them. And I was like, all right, let me think about it. So I'm talking to a guy on range, and I was like, bro, I really don't want to rat my uncle out. And this guy snaps on me, right? Yeah, the same look you just gave. He goes, he's fucking dead, you idiot. Yeah, like, what are you talking about ratting him out? And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. Like, that's – he's like,
what? He doesn't give a shit.
Exactly. That's what Buddy. He's like, he would want you to say this. I hope you know that. Like,
Yeah.
you're fucking dumb, bro. He's like, you're gonna go do all that time just to what? Think you're solid? And I was
Yeah.
like,
For him to think you're solid? Like
yeah, right. I was like, touche, touche. So I call my lawyer back and I tell him, yeah, let's run that, right? So about 5 months go by, and I have a bail hearing coming up now, right? And he's like, listen, I have the date set for the first charges. They're going to be withdrawn the week before the bail date. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, like I've talked to the Crown. He's agreed to withdraw them. But they're probably going to try and hit you hard on that second gun, though. And I was like, whatever, 17 years, 15 years, that's fucking whatever. They give me better than that, right? So we go, they withdraw them. Now, this is so the girl that killed my uncle, because remember I told you when the cops came in, they took everybody's name before they let us leave on the Good Samaritan law, right? So she was put down as my co-accused because she said that she lived there too, right? So we're in the hearing to get my charges withdrawn. And the judge goes, does the withdrawal also count for Shauna Stiers? And my lawyer goes, absolutely not. So fuck her. She killed my uncle. She got hit with all those. I really don't know how. I've tried to find out what happened to her since I got out, but I just don't know, right? So, but I know that her charges never got dropped, and fuck her. That's karma for, it's my fault for bringing the fentanyl around, but she the one that hit him with the needle, and she robbed the safe. So it's kind of like a bittersweet thing, because if she didn't rob us, I would have got hit with all the drug charges, right, and the cash charges. But since she did rob us, like, I'm good, but she also killed my uncle, so it's just like a big fucking, bittersweet type of deal. So anyways, they dropped those the week before my bail hearing. My mom I started talking to my mom the second time that I went in. I called her. We started making good, right? And I let her know that, like, I forgave her for the way I felt and shit like that, right? And we started talking and being good. And I was like, hey, Mom, would you be my surety, or would you try for bail? Because she had always said, ever since that first time when she came and picked me up when I was 12, like, this is the only time I'll ever do this. Don't ever call me if you go to jail, like. So I convinced her that I was, like, really going to turn my life around, which, I mean, when you're in jail, and I was only in for like 7 months on that second one before I got bail, but I mean, that was enough time to get sober, you know what I mean? And in my head, I genuinely believed that when I got out, I was going to do better, right? Like, but I wasn't ready, apparently. So,
but you didn't.
no.
You think somebody on the outside who at least has an understanding of your behavior would say, yeah, that's not true. You may think that right now, but you're not going to do that.
And she was so mad because I really did convince her. And, like, bro, I did those, the Bible courses that you can do and you get the certificates. Do you guys have those? So I did all of those. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was really trying to get this bail. And my mom agreed to be my surety. And they had just dropped those other charges. So the judge was like, you haven't gotten any trouble while you've been inside. Like, I was serving at this point. Like, I became a server, which means, like, because so in Maplehurst, it's provincial, but it's maximum security. So at best, on a good day, you can be out for 3 hours. You know what I mean? Like, an hour in the morning, an hour at lunch, and an hour at night. That's right. At best with no lockdowns. So usually you're only out for, like, they'll let you out in the morning and let you out at the night. Or, like, you know what I mean? They'll never let you out at all three. So when you're a server, though, you never lock up. You're the only two people on range because you got to go hand out the mail. You got to hand out the food trays. You got to go back cell to cell. And you know what I mean? Like, and deal with them. Like, you basically run in the range, right? So I was a server, so that looked good too because it showed that I had good behavior when I was in there. And I really planned on changing. And so my mom, we go for the bail hearing, and it's COVID, so it's all over phones, right? So the judge is like he's like on the fence. And then my mom tells him, she goes, I have security cameras at my house. So even when I'm at work, I could, like, watch him on my phone. And, like, if he opens my door, it'll bing off to my phone and stuff, right? And that's what swayed the judge in the favor of letting me out. So the thing is, I can't live at my mom's house. Like, me and my stepdad butted heads. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just would not work. So it was kind of doomed from the start because the plan was my mom was going to be my surety. I was going to get house arrest to her house, but she was going to let me go live at Anne's house, my best friend, on the agreement of I didn't leave the house. You know what I mean?
Right.
And she's like, and if you know that you're going to fuck up, you better tell me so I can pull your bail, right? So I'm like, all right, cool. So they grant my bail, whatever, house arrest to my mom's. I go to my friend Anne's. I'm living there for 2 days. My brother comes over. He has a loaded needle. I start doing needles again, right off hop. Boom. I put a gram of ice needle, which is like insane for a shot after 7 months. So I put a gram of ice needle. I hit it. I have track marks. I fucking hate them every time I look at them. I hit it and boom. I'm like, you can't breathe when you do that shot of meth. It takes your breath away. You can't breathe. You're like, and you feel the fire go through your whole shit. And then like, you just get like, you know what I mean? You start like getting jacked up. So I hit it. I'm like, let's go rob somebody. Like instantly. My brother's like, come on. I'm like, come on yourself. You just gave me a needle. Let's go. Right. So I call my mom. We go down to Chaz's house. And this girl, I kept in contact with this girl the whole time I was in the pen, right? 3 months before I got out, her house got raided and she's looking at like fucking 8 years right now. So we go to her house, right? And she sets a lick up for us, whatever. And dude comes in, whatever. You know, I come up behind him. I put a knife on his thing. And my brother takes his side bag off, get out the house, whatever. I'm like, I should probably call my mom and tell her to pull my bail. It's been 2 days, right? So I'm like, I'm dreading it because I'm like, she's going to be so disappointed, so mad, you know? Because I'm like, this wasn't the plan, but I guess it kind of was. Like, you know what I mean? I just wasn't ready. So I call my mom. I tell her, listen, pull my bail. I'm using again, right? So she hangs up, whatever. And I went on a spree. I was only out for 2 weeks. And every single person that would meet up with me and my brother got robbed. And like, there's this guy, Jesse Jukes. I was like sleeping with this one girl, right? And she shows up at the trap that we're at, and her head's cracked open. She crying and shit. She like, this is how junky does she went to. She like, I need you to cauterize my head. I need you to cauterize my head. And I'm like, yo, what are you talking about? Cauterize your head? Like I look at it, there's like a hairline crack, so it's bleeding a lot, right? So I'm like, yo, what the fuck even happened? And she's like, Jukes and Bailey jumped me in the basement at your old house on Rodden Street, the one that I got arrested going to. Oh shit, I left something out about the weed pen. Sorry. So when I got bail, they gave me my property, right? And I'm about to walk out of Maplehurst, and I'm going through my pockets, right? And sure enough, I pull a couple bullets out of my pockets that they missed, and I pull the weed pen out. The shit was in my coat pocket the whole time. I never had to leave my friend's house that day that I got arrested. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I was like, what the fuck? You know, but that just shows you where my head was, right? So anyways, back to this. So I'm like, where are they? She's like, they're still at that house. So me and my brother go to a house that's like diagonal from it. It's on Buffalo Street. So, Bruce Street. The halfway house is on Buffalo Street. So it's on Bruce Street. So you're at this house on Bruce Street. You can see my old house diagonally on Rodden Street, right? So me and my brother are sitting there at this guy's house. And my brother's like, don't bring the gun, right? Because I had a Browning shotgun it was a 12 gauge and it was cut down too. And my brother's like, don't bring the gun. And I was like, why? And he's like, bro, you're way too jacked up. Don't bring the gun. You know what I mean? So we're arguing, whatever. I end up leaving the gun, thankfully. So we go to this house, right? And my brother knows the girl who's living there now. So she lets us in. My brother's like, where's Jukes? She's like, oh, he's sleeping in the front room, like in my daughter's room. My daughter's not here though, right? Her daughter is like our age. But she's like, he's sleeping in my daughter's room, but my daughter's not here, whatever. So me and my brother just walk straight to the room, right? And the door's locked. So I turn around and like horse kick the door, right? It's not budging. I'm so high off this fucking meth shot that I did. I grab the door and I just start pulling this way with all my weight. And it's like a rock. It's not like a nice house, you know what I mean? Like the trim and all this type of shit is like, it's 2x4s put together and shit, you know? Right. So I put all my weight on the shit and I pull the fucking frame like this much off, you know what I mean? I'm just so high. So then me and my brother start kicking it now. It finally comes open and this guy's so passed out on the bed, he didn't even wake up from that, right? So there's a baseball bat sitting beside the futon. So I grab that shit and I smashed him into the ribs with it, right? Wham! My brother starts stomping on his head. We fucked him up real bad. This girl's out there screaming. She's like, I'm gonna call the cops. Like, there's so much blood. Like, this guy's face was just leaking. She's like, get it. This is my daughter's room. Like, I'm calling the cops. My brother's like, let's go. I'm like, all right, fuck. So I start walking out. I'm like, nah, I'm not done. I go back into the room. I had a like a knife that it looked like a straight razor that you shave with, but it was like a flick knife, it flicked open. So I grabbed that shit, and like he has this scar to this day, obviously, but I cut him from here to fucking here with it. I grabbed the back of his head and just whoosh. My brother's like, let's go. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, cool, we gotta cut. Boom. So I cut. We go back to the house, and my boy Boots, rest in peace, he calls me and he's like, yo, what the fuck did you just do at my niece's house? Da da da. And I was so explain the situation to him, and he's like, all right, yo, like you're good then, you're good. But he's like, yo, you're getting too crazy, kid. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Because Boots is like almost 40, right? So he's like, what are you doing, kid? Like, you're getting way too out of hand. Like, I keep hearing your name everywhere, and it's not in a good way. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So my brother called me, and like we split, whatever. My brother called me, and he's like, yo, I need you to come to Stacy's with me. And I was like, I ain't going to that house. It's a one way in, one way out. Like, and it's on the 3rd floor. And there's like wrought iron fence around it with like, the spiky wrought iron fence type gates. So that's like all around it. So you ain't jumping out the window. You're hitting that for sure. You know what I mean? And it's on the 3rd floor, and I'm scared of heights. So all you can do is go up the stairs, turn again, and then you're at the door, right? And it's like just a rickety house. Like there's no lock on the door because it's been kicked open so many times. Like my brother this girl was bagging my brother, and this helped us out in court because this girl was bagging my brother on like voice messages on Facebook Messenger. Like, please, I need you to come stay with me. Like, I'm scared to stay here by myself. It keeps getting robbed because her boyfriend was like a big drug dealer, but they had broken up and people didn't really know that he wasn't there still, right? So somebody did a home invasion, and like she had gotten like the R word and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like some real bad stuff had happened to her. So she was like begging my brother to come stay there. And I was like, bro, I don't feel comfortable about being in that house, right? So my brother, now it's different. Like I cut him off. I don't even talk to him now. But before, like, my brother had a good way of making you feel bad, feel sorry for him, like feel like you had to come with him and do it. I don't know. Maybe it was just me because my loyalty, you know what I mean? But like, so I ended up going there with him, right? And then he's like, okay, so we're going to rent the room off of her. So I'm like, yo, you begged me to come here and I got to give her money for a room? What the fuck? And I don't even want to stay here, right? So I end up giving her a gram of down and $300, right? And then the room, you couldn't even go in the room. It was so jam-packed with like furniture and bags of clothes and garbage and shit. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't do nothing in that room. So now I paid you for a room I don't want to stay in a house I don't want to stay in, and a room that I have to clean. You know what I mean? Like it was just, everything was just bad from the start, right? So this girl didn't have a living room. You walk in the house, right? And it's one hallway. The kitchen's here. There's a room here, and a room here, then the bathroom. And it's all off one hallway. That's all it is, right? Her couch is in the bathroom, like one of those little love seats. It's in the bathroom. There's a fucking basket full of everything that you need to shoot needles, right? Just right in the middle, like it's a fucking decoration piece on the table. So we're in this house, and I'm chilling in the bathroom, and I never really did down. And then this week, the last week, I had started like smoking down my brother, just like little bits, but I was still doing the meth. So I wasn't nodding out like everybody else, right? I was just getting like high from it. And like some people will say like when you do opiates, it feels like it creeps up on you, but it feels like a warm hug from God. That's what my brother used to say, which is so fucked. But down. So I'm sitting in her bathroom, and I had like a half ounce of down, and my friend Whitney. So the team used to be me, my brother, Whitney, and Ann, right? Ann was just like the safe house. So she was part of the team, like everybody, and we all communicated through her too. Like if I couldn't get a hold of them, I tell Ann and it's getting to one of them, or vice versa. Right.
Right.
So Whitney had just done 2 years less a day, because in Canada, 2 years plus a day means you're going to the penitentiary. 2 years less a day means you're staying in provincial. So that's how they categorize that. So Whitney had just gotten 2 years less a day because she was caught up in a raid. So she was out for a couple of days, right? but she had no probation, no paper, no nothing, right? She did her sentence and she was out because it was provincial. Like once in the feds, like you're no matter what, you're on parole when you get out. You can't get out and not be on parole. You know what I mean? So anyways, so she was out for like a day or two and she messages me and she's like, "Hey, like I need help selling this. Like, what's up?" And I'm like, yo, ice really kicking right now. Like, no, people want down. Meth is so cheap right now, you know? I was like, come over and I'll put you on. Like, I'll give you like a ball of down, whatever, you know, just to start you up. She's like, all right, bet. Where are you? So I told her, right? I'm like, I'm on Mary Street. She's like, I'm not coming to that house. And I was like, so we argued on the phone for like 10, 15 minutes. And then finally, I'm like, listen, I'll give you 2 extra grams that you don't have to pay back for. Just come pick it up and go. Like, I was like, I'm too lazy. I don't want to leave this couch right now, which was like a super downfall. But so she's like, I fucking hate you, but all right, I'm coming, right? So she shows up, bro. And in the meantime, or sorry, right before she showed up, this girl, Stacy, that whose house it was, she had told us, she's like, I'm going to the store. Do you guys need anything? I'm like, yeah, I need a pack of cigarettes, right? Well, remember I told you the door didn't have a lock, right? So the way
Right.
that you lock this door is because when you walk in, the wall kind of does one of those curve things, you know? So you take this 2x4, you put it at the bottom of the door, you wedge it against the baseboard of that little curve thing, and then if you want extra security, there's like a big a big chair that would be like on a couch set, you know what I mean? And you
Mm.
push that up against the door too, right? And that's the lock. So this girl's gone for like probably an hour at this point, right? And I'm like, yo, where the fuck is this girl, right? Like the store is literally 5 minutes away. So I walk out of the bathroom and I look over at the door and the 2x4 is down. Like the door's locked. And I'm like, now it clicks in my head. I'm like, that's it. I'm like, Andrew, did you put the 2x4 down? He's like, nah, how's she supposed to get back in? And I was like, that's impossible for her to, like, you know what I mean? It's impossible. You can't walk out the door and then also put the 2x4 down.
Right.
So I'm
Like,
like,
she not leave?
that's what I'm saying, right? I'm like, where is this girl? Like, it's not a big fucking apartment. So I go to the one room, and like, mind you, every room is trashed to shit. Like, you know, it's hard to push the doors open. There's so much stuff in these fucking rooms. So like, I go to the one room, I look, there's nothing in there. I'm like, yo, check the middle bedroom. I'm gonna go check the other bedroom, right? My brother's like, yeah, there's nothing in there, whatever. So we're sitting, and I hear something in the middle bedroom, and I'm like, I hear like a box move or something, and I'm like, yo, this girl's setting us up. She begged us to come here. She's trying to get us robbed. Like, I'm like, yo, there's people in that room right now. So I grabbed the shotgun, and I'm like, yo, if anybody's in this house, like, you're getting shot 100%. Like, nobody's robbing me. I'm like, Andrew, go open that door, right? So he goes to open the door, and like, you know, when somebody pushes back on a door, like you'd have
Yeah.
that little match. Well, the door's doing that, and I'm like, yo, somebody's in there, bro. And I'm like tweaking out, and he's like, bro, no, there's nobody in there. He's like, there's a mattress that's leaning against the door, and the dog is in there. I'm like, the dog? There's a dog here? What the fuck? You know? So he's like, I believe it for some reason. I believe it. Well, because I said somebody was going to get shot, what happened was this girl was in there on the phone with the cops. She's saying that people are in her house trying to rob it. Well, I hear another noise, right? And this is why
Is she just fucked up?
Weekend.
Oh, okay.
I'll explain it. So one of my charges on the paperwork that I sent you was careless use of a firearm, right? So what happened was she's on the phone with the cops. I hear another noise in there. I say, fuck this. I go to the door and I rack the shotgun, right? Because this one was a pump. So I'm like, yo, I'm about to bump through this door. She on the phone with the cops while I did that. So now they're like hightailing there, right? So Whitney shows up and I'm like, I don't even tell her about any of this shit because I don't know the cops are on the way. I don't tell her somebody was just in the room. So I go to scale her shit up, right? She's there for like maybe 5 minutes. My brother taps me and it's a message from the Stacy girl's aunt. And she says to my brother, if anything happens to Stacy, I'll find you. My brother's like, yo, look at this. So I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, yo, call a cab. Let's get the fuck out of here. Like, you know, as I'm calling a cab, boom, 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 Bradford police. I'm like, oh no, what the fuck? Whitney looks at me. She's like, I fucking hate you. You know, like, because I convinced her to come there. She didn't want to come. She's not even there 5 minutes, bro. And she just got out. You know what I mean? She's like, I fucking hate you. And I was like, listen, whatever happens, I will take every charge, I promise, right? So So I'm like, my brother's like, I'm going to hoop all this shit, right? So he goes in the bathroom, he starts banging packages. Whitney goes and hides she stands in the shower. And I'm like, I know I'm going to jail because I ain't jumping out that fucking window, right? So the board's down. I push that chair up against the door and the board. I'm like, fuck you guys, you can kick the door, right? Like I ain't opening shit. So I go and I lay in this girl's bed, right? And I start smoking a cigarette. And I'm texting Ann and my baby mom, and I'm like, hey, I'm going back to jail. Like, I fucked up, da da da. Well, out of nowhere, we don't know this girl's here, right? This girl comes flying out that middle bedroom, and she all disoriented. She like, who are these people in my house? Why are you in my house? I'm like, what the fuck? She moves the chair, opens the thing, lets the cops in. She's like, I don't know who these people are in my house. I'm like, oh no, this is about to go so bad. So I had one of those those like mountain climbing backpacks? They're like the big ones.
Yeah.
So I had one of those with all my clothes in it. So I shoved the shotgun in there and put it under the couch or behind the couch in the bathroom, right? Not the greatest hiding spot, but I ain't have nowhere else to hide it, right? So I put it there, and I'm in the bedroom with no weapons on me, or I had a knife on my hip, and I see the cop come in, same fucking cop from the first 2 times, right? He's like, where's the gun, McEwen? I know you have a gun, right? And I was like, I really don't have a gun. Fuck you, right? And then I see the girl behind him with the taser. And I was like, instantly, I throw my hands up. I'm like, I'm not resisting. I changed my whole tone because at first I'm telling him, fuck you, right? But I'm like, oh, I'm not resisting. Don't fucking tase me. So I still have the shirt too that I was wearing, and I can't wear it anymore. It has a big rip here. So like as I'm trying to stand up off the bed, the cop, he's like a bigger guy. He grabs me by the front of my shirt and he like tries to put me through the fucking floor, bro. Slams me so fucking hard. I remember seeing stars and like my body going like a hot flash almost. I'm like, what the fuck, right? He's like, where's the gun? Where's the gun? I'm like, yo, I really don't have a gun this time. I really don't, right? So he's searching me, pulls the knife off me. He's like, you got something though, right? And I was like, I really don't have a gun. So they arrest me. They find my brother and Whitney in the bathroom, right? They arrest them. They sit us down in the hallways, right? Well, this Stacy girl, she's standing out there talking to the cops, tweaking, and she's like, I don't know who any of you guys are. She points at the girl. She's like, and who's this bitch in my house? Like, you know what I mean? Whitney's like, yo, fuck you, bitch. And I'm like, this is where I trip her up though, because I look at her and I was like, yo, are you serious? I'm like, I didn't say the down. I really didn't give you $300 to stay in a room. Or no, I'm like, I really didn't pay you to stay in this room. And she goes, what, the $300? And the cop goes, I thought you didn't know who they were. So
Yeah.
she's like, so they run her name. Bitch has a warrant. So
Right.
now they're like, you're under arrest for failure to appear to a court appearance, right? So she's like, I would have never let you in if I knew that I was gonna get arrested. And we're kind of laughing now. And the cops they're searching whatever, and they haven't found the gun yet. So I'm like, yo, listen, I'm like, everything in this house is mine, right? Like, I don't even know what's in this house other than my shit, but I'm like, everything in this house is mine. I'm like, she just came to see me quick. Like, this is just my friend. I haven't seen her. And like, they run Whitney's name. They find out she's not on paperwork. She's not on nothing. They're really about to let her go, right? Because like, they believe me, right? There's no gun. There's no nothing. They're really about to let her go. And then his partner goes, I found the gun. I found a gun. The cop looks at me and goes, I knew it, motherfucker. I was like, oh shit. So now Whitney's going to jail too, even though I'm like, listen, the gun's mine. I'm like, there's a scale on the fucking bathroom counter. There's like, one of my charges is there's 7 individually wrapped packages of down crystal, because my brother started hooping them, but missed 7 of them, I guess. So I'm like, everything in this house is mine. Like, everything is mine. Well, that cop must have not known that I got the other charges withdrawn, the very first one, right? Because he's like, you sure you really want to do that? He's like, you're probably up to like 18 years by now, And I was like, 18 years? I'm like, I got my other charges dropped. What the fuck are you talking about, right? And he's like, you really sure you want to do that? I'm like, everything in this house is mine, bro. Like, I look at my brother, I look at Whitney, I'm like, just shut the fuck up, right? I'm like, everything in this house is mine. So they take us, whatever. We go to the police station. Now we're in the holding cells, and when they go to interview me, right, they put me in the interview room. They have the little camera on, and I'm like, all right, listen, I got something to tell y'all. So they're all like, okay, because everybody in my city rats, everybody, And I'm like, unfortunately, I can't talk to you until my lawyer comes. They're so mad. They're like, get the fuck back to your cell, bring me back to my cell. And they left the door open when that Stacy girl was in there for her little interview, and we heard everything she said. Right? She's talking about people that weren't even involved, like just singing away, right? And I'm like, what's the point? Like, I'm taking the charges. You guys are all gonna get released as soon as I plea. You know what I mean? Like, I never understood that. And anyways, so we're there for a couple of days in the holding cells, and then they're transferring us to Maplehurst, right? So they put us all in the same paddy wagon. We're all separated, right? There's like 4 little cubicles. You know what? You've been in those, I'm sure. So you can talk to each other in them, right? So this Stacy girl is like, she's sobered up a little bit now, right? And she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And she explains what happened, right? So what happened was she took a big shot of ice and then was all pumped and was like, I'm going to go to the store, right? But I had given her that gram of down, right? So she goes in the room and she does a big whack of the fentanyl too. And she passes out. Well, when she wakes up, she just hears me and my brother in the house, and we're talking about robbing somebody, right? And she thinks that we're talking about her because she had just woken up. So then she makes that sound. I say I'm going to shoot through the door. So then she gets scared, messages her aunt, then calls the cops. And now she's on the phone with the cops, makes another noise. I rack the shotgun, and then she's like, I was just so fucked up. She's like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, yeah, but that doesn't explain why you came out saying you didn't know who we were. And she's like, well, you got to understand, like, I thought you guys were talking about tying me up and da-da-da, because me and my brother were talking about, well, we're going to tie this person up and we'll take everything to the safe. And she thought that we were talking about her, right? And I'm like, still, fuck you, right? I'm like, whatever. She's like, are you really taking the charges? And I was like, listen, make no mistake about this. I am not taking these charges for you or for my brother. The only reason I'm taking these charges is because it's my fault Whitney's here, I was like, if Whitney wasn't here, all 3 of us would be sitting and fighting this case, But, like, I can't let her sit like that, right? Like, it was my fault that she was there, and I got to own up to that, right? So I get her out on bail. This never happens either. We get to Maplehurst. There's one cell in, like, A&D. I think it's called something different in the States, right? Like when you first get to jail. Ours is called A&D, right? Admission and departure. So we get there, and there's one cell that has a phone in it, and the phone's never on, right? They put me in that cell. I pick it up, the fucking phone is on. I was like, no way. So I call Ann, and I'm like, yo, listen, you have to make it right with your sister, because her and her sister Ginger were in a fight at the time, right? So I'm like, but we always use Ginger to bail people out. She's always somebody's surety, right? So I'm like, you have to make it right with Ginger for me, like, please. And Anne was in love with me, whatever. Like, I have her name tattooed on my leg. She was my best friend, but she wanted to be with me. But, like, I called her auntie and shit. You know what I mean? She was like almost 50. But anyways, so she would do anything for me, right? So she made it right with Ginger, and this was on like a Tuesday. On the Friday, I had Whitney out on bail, right? So, like, I got her out, and then I'm talking to my lawyer, and he's like, listen, you can beat this case the same way that you beat the first one. They never found the gun on you. It's not your house. You know what I mean? He's like, you're a fucking idiot for saying everything was yours. But he's like, I can use the defense that you were so fucked up and didn't know what you were talking about. He's like, we can run it and see how it works. And I was like, listen, bro, I can't do that to Whitney, I was like, it's my fault that she's there. I got to take the charge, bro. That's just
but she's not, it's not her shit either. It's not her place. She'd get off the same way you would get off. Wasn't me. I showed up to meet this fucking guy.
You know how many people, Matt, when I was in the pen and I told them this story, you know how many people said that exact same thing? Like, you're a fucking idiot. And I was like, I was so stuck in my own head that, like, nah, I'm loyal. I need to do this for her. You know what I mean? And, like, and then it didn't help that on range, like in provincial, it gave me a little bit of cred. People are like, yo, you're solid as fuck, bro. You're taking the charges for them, da-da-da. And that boosts my ego a little bit. I hadn't grown up yet, right? Mm-hmm. So my lawyer, I'm arguing with my lawyer, and he goes, listen, I'm not taking this case then. He's like, I'll refer you to somebody else, but I'm not representing you for that. And I was like, what? For real? He's like, bro, you want to be a fucking tough guy idiot? Go be a tough guy idiot, Go be solid with a different lawyer. And I was like, oh, fuck. So originally, he was telling me for that 22 that they found on my waist when they pulled me over on the bike, that he could get me 2 years less a day and keep me out of the pen, right? Well, after that, he goes, 3 years is the best I can do for you. And I was like, oh, motherfucker. So I'm like, whatever, just run it, right? I want to plea as soon as possible so her charges get dropped. And so I ended up having 2 different court dates, though, because they didn't pile the charges together. They fucking gave me 2 fuckers, right? So
it's worse and worse.
Right? So So he refers me to this lawyer, and I'm talked to him one time, and then after that, it's his little like this girl that's in like law school representing me now, basically, right? So I get up myself for a lawyer call the one day, and she's like, "Listen, I got a deal. I can get you 18 months for the shotgun, but it's going to be consecutive, like the one that consecutives. I do my first 3, and then I do yeah. So it's going to
Right.
be consecutive, right?" And I was like, "Yo, you can't run it concurrent." And she's like, "No, it's 18 months consecutive, or like, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "Just set the date, you know?" So my mom was so mad at me. Like, I was with my son's mom at the time. She broke up with me because of that. Because she's like, "You could have not even went to the pen, and now you're gonna go and do over 4 years. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?" You know what I mean? And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." You know. So I ended up, because of the time served that I got, because the first 2 times that I was on bail, one was 6 months, one was 7 months. They gave me time for those, and it was during COVID, so they gave me double time, right, for a couple of the days. And then before I went to the pen, I sat for a year and a half doing dead time, right? So um, the deal was like just under 5 years, and I ended up, with my dead time and everything, I ended up getting 3 years, 2 months and 28 days to serve in the pen, right? But I had already
So,
done the year and a half in provincial, so really I was doing a little over 4 years, right?
so real quick, concurrent is at the same time.
No, that's it's the one that I had to do my 3 years, and then the next 18 months started.
Right. So consecutive.
Yeah,
So
consecutive.
they
Okay, I
ran them
mixed it up.
consecutive.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought
I think it's on the paperwork I showed you.
right.
But but yeah, so like they were pissed about that. Like, my lawyer dropped me, and he was a really good lawyer too, man. Like, um, yeah, he was a dope lawyer. But anyways, so I plea out. The day I plea out, my brother gets released. Whitney gets her bail withdrawn or whatever, and the girl that called the cops and did all this also gets her charges dropped. You know, I had no say over that, but I was like, I guess I have to take that one dry.
Yeah, but you're the one that got her charges dropped.
Exactly, though, right? But that's what I mean, is like, fuck. So I kind of, in order to get my brother and Whitney off, I also had to get this girl off that fucked us over and called the cops, right? Well, whatever, it is what it is. So I finally get transferred to the pen, and I go to reception first, obviously, right? Which is, it's called Joyceville Medium, and nobody stays there. Like, it's just reception. That's all it is, right?
Yeah, they categorize you and decide where to send you.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So
That's how it is.
because
That's how it is in the States, by the way.
yeah, okay, I thought so. Like, I listen to your show every day at work,
Yeah.
so like,
Well, in the feds, it's different. By the time you get, like if you're in the they do that in the Marshals holdover. So they're
okay,
categorizing you using the PSI. So
Mhm.
right away, but once you're sentenced, within a few days, they know what prison you're going to.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
in the state system, they typically send you somewhere where sometimes you hang out for a month, sometimes it's 6 months before they decide where to
Yep.
send you.
Yeah, that's the exact same as Joyceville reception is. Like, I was only there for 4 months, but like, there was guys on range that had been there for almost a year, still waiting to get placed somewhere, you know. And because how much trouble I was getting in that last time that I was in provincial, like, I was getting in fights every day, man. Like, it got to a point where like I think I was on like 3 different ranges at one point because I just kept getting in problems, you know. Like, I really didn't care. I was mad. I was like, I lost my girlfriend at the time. I wasn't talking to my kids. Like, it was just, everything was bad, right? And because of all my misconducts, I don't know what they're called in the States, but if you get into a fight, it's like a disciplinary report basically, but they
Right.
call them misconducts, right? So I had 17 misconducts by the time I got to the pen, and every one of those adds to your score, right? So out of 38, my score was 21.
Mm.
So they placed me as max, like a maximum inmate, and I was like, oh fuck, right? So my first PO when I got to reception, because your PO changes when you go to a different place, right? So my first PO when I got to reception, she pulls me in the office and she goes, "Hey, listen, like, if you get into one problem here, anything," she's like, "you were gonna go to max. If you can be good until you get placed, I will make sure that you go to a high medium," right? Which is like, who doesn't want to go to like max or medium? I'm going to go to medium, you know? So I stayed out of trouble for that 4 months that I was there, right? Like, I got caught one time with 50 kiwis under my bed because I was letting them still in my cell. They would give me a bottle, and I don't drink, right? So I'd just sell it, right? But sometimes my cell stunk like a fucking brewery. It was so bad. But one time they did a search, and yeah, there was a garbage bag, and there's 50 kiwis in it, right? So they're like, "Oh, what are these for?" You know? And I was like, "Oh, I like kiwis." They're like, "Yeah, right." So that's the only trouble I got in there. And so she placed me to Collins Bay medium, which is like supposed to be the craziest medium, but I found out Workworth was actually way crazier, which is supposed to be a step lower. You know what I mean? So it was like weird. It was mixed up. But Collins Bay was still crazy. It's all gangs and stuff, right? So I get there and I'm on range 8 or unit 8. And my dad had this friend named Easy, right? And Easy was in the pen. He's doing 8 years. And the last thing my dad ever said, oh, sorry, I skipped over that. When I got to reception, it was COVID. So they had to quarantine you for 7 days, right? So you go to this quarantine range and you only leave your cell for a shower or phone like 20 minutes a day, right? That's it.
Yeah.
And I hadn't talked to my dad for a year. The last time I seen my dad was at that. Sorry, can you hear that?
Barely.
Okay, good. I don't know what that was, but so the last time I had seen my dad was at that trap house on Rodden Street, right? And my dad and my uncles were really racist, right? And I think that's why I'm not, because they always tried to push that on me, like they were really racist. So we're sitting in my room the one day, and my plug's there, Shorty's there.
Racist in what way? Against blacks?
Yes. Like,
are there a lot of blacks in Canada?
Yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. Toronto's like predominantly black and mixed.
Really?
Like,
I always
penitentiary is the where I was, Collins Bay. Sorry to cut you off. Collins Bay and Workworth are both like the white guys are the minorities. Same within provincial.
Wow. I just assumed. I don't know why I assumed that. I assumed it was. I think, and this is probably wrong. I feel like the makeup of Canada is a lot like the UK.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think of the UK as having a lot of blacks. I think of them having a lot of like Indians and Pakistanis, and I guess Muslims at this point.
Oh, we have a lot of Indian and Pakistani now too. When I got out, it was like everything was so different. But always, like my whole life, it's in the jail system and like in the streets, like the white guys are the minorities here.
Yeah. Okay.
So my uncles and my dad were like really racist, you know, and they always tried to push it on me. Like, and they always told my sister, like, you could never date a black guy, tell me I could. It's funny because my girlfriend's black. But anyways, so where was I going with that? So
your dad, you had been locked up. It was COVID.
Yeah. So because I took it back a little bit. The last time I seen my dad, yeah. So my dad's super racist. So we're sitting in the trap and we're in my room, and my plug shows up, right? And my dad was like fucked up at this point, like days of smoking rock, and he was such an alcoholic that like he died from it. So he had cirrhosis of the liver really bad, and then the last like drugs he ever did killed him, right? So but he was dying either way from his liver, right? So like he was just fucked up, and Shorty walks in and my dad's like, who the fuck's this N-word, right? And I was like, why Shorty pulls his gun out. Boom. He's like, the fuck did you just say to me? And I was like, bro, this is my dad. And he's like, I don't give a fuck. He's like, yo, either you beat him or I'm beating him. And I was like, ugh. So I'm like, it would have been so much worse. Shorty would have probably pistol whipped him and shit. So I just started firing off on my dad, right? My dad's like, what the fuck, dog? What the fuck, right? And like, that's the last time I ever see my dad, bro. And I regret that so much every day. But it was like, I did it or he was going to do it so much worse. You know what I mean?
Right.
So for like, because that was a year before I got arrested, right? So, or maybe a little less than a year. But so the whole time after that, my dad was like trying to reach out to me through people, and I would always be like, fuck off, right? And then so I'm sitting in quarantine now in reception, and I'm like, I really want to talk to my dad. I'm like, I think it's time to like apologize and reach out, whatever. So I don't know about the States. I'm assuming it's the same, but you have like a phone list. You can't just call anybody. You have to get the numbers approved. And
yes.
Okay. So I fill out a thing for my dad, right? And well, for my grandma's house, but I knew my dad would be there, right? So I filled it out and I put it in. And the next day, man, I call Ann, my best friend, and she's like, hey, you really need to call your mom. And I'm like, why? Like, she's like, just call your mom, please. So boom. So I call my mom and she's like, hey, listen, your dad passed away last night. And I was like, what? I was like, I just put a thing in to talk to him, like, so that really spun my head, right? So I was like, fuck, because I was like, the timing, I was like, I had so much time to make it right, and like, you know what I mean? And I just didn't, and whatever. And then I had a dream, and like, he said goodbye to me in a dream, and it was so real. It was crazy. But like, so so I get out of quarantine and I'm not really like feeling like too great. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I kind of want to isolate at this point, just sit in my cell and do my thing. But you can't do that when you get there. You got to go out to yard. You know what I mean? Like in Canada, I don't know about the States, but your first, no matter what pen you go to, the first 3 days that you're there, you have to show up to yard because you have to give people time to, maybe this guy that you have a problem with or ripped off or something didn't come out that day. So you have to go out for the first 3 days. And then after that, you don't ever have to go out if you don't want to again. You know what I mean? So like, I just want to chill in myself. I'm not worried about nobody, but like, so I have to go out to yard and mingle with people, but whatever. I ended up running into a bunch of people from my city and like, so I'm good, whatever. And then I stayed out of trouble there. So she let me go to Collins Bay Medium, right? So I get there and my dad had this friend, Easy. And the last thing my dad ever said to Easy was, hey, my son's going to the pen. If you run into him, take care of him, please. So I show up on unit and the first person I see is Easy. And I was like, yo, that's my dad looking out for me for sure, So I'm like, yo, what's up? He's like, oh, you're Joe's son, right? And I was like, yeah, da-da-da. So he put me under his wing and like, I was good. So he introduces me to this guy, Banks, who's the lifer, right? And I'm like, yo, I got some money, bro. Like, I spent 15 grand with Banks in this 6 months that I was there. So I'm like buying tobacco off him. I'm a big smoker, right? So I'm buying tobacco off him. I'm buying the tooth. Do you guys get the Dawn Mist toothpaste? Is that what you guys get? It has like those little white caps on the top, and you can like the cap has like it's kind of hollowed.
Not sure. Okay.
Okay, okay.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it sounds like the ones we get.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then like the orange Bob Barker slides and shit.
Yeah.
So these toothpaste caps, you can fill them up with shatter, right? Like it's probably the size of this.
Oh, you mean the state? Okay, so it's from the state. It's like what the state gives you when you
Yes,
first get there.
yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what.
Those little tiny, like, yeah,
Yeah, so that cap, the way that it's little hollowed out, so you can fill that up with shatter. Like, you know what shatter is? Weed. It's
okay,
it's like weed concentrate turned into like a gooey type of thing, right?
right.
So you can fill that up with shatter, and then they're $100 a cap, right? So this guy, this guy was giving me a bale of tobacco, which was $1,200. So he'd give me that, and he'd give me 10 Dawn Mist caps, and so I would owe him 1,700 because I would owe him 500 for the caps and 1,200 for the tobacco, right? But off of that, if you're smart, you can make like 3-4 grand off of that, no problem. You just bust the tobacco up real small, like, you know what I mean? Like, you just be chintzy with it, whatever. Or you sell zaps individually. You like take the clippers, the toenail clippers, that little piece that's to clean your nails, and you take a little chunk of the shatter out and you squeeze it between that paper that you take off the toilet paper. You know what I'm talking about? The toilet paper comes wrapped in that like really thin paper.
Yeah,
Is it like that in the States? That's what we used for rolling paper there too,
right.
because it's better than Bible paper because it has no like, it's just way thinner, right? So you squeeze a little bit of shatter in that and you can sell it for $10 for one little hit, right? So if you bust all 10 of those caps out, like you're gonna make like $1,000-1,500 just off of those things, right? So if you're smart with it, so for a while, like I was doing really good for this guy. Like every couple days, I'm getting another bale and more 10 caps, right? People are always at my cell. Like I always had big bags of canteen, and the little range I was on, because like unit 8, it's like a big unit, but then it's all broken up into different ranges. Just none of them are closed off. Like it's just open. You can go to whatever range you want. You know what I mean? And there's like stairs that go up to the upstairs range and stuff, and it's just all open. So on the little range I was on, it was these Driftwood guys from Toronto. They're Crips, right? This gang. And they were mad that I wasn't buying off of them because they seen that my cell was always booming, right? So they're like, yo, like the buddy came in my cell the one day, the little head guy, and he's like, hey, like, why don't you get stuff off of us? He's like, oh, I got cell phones. Like, yo, I can get you whatever you want. And I'm like, no, I'm good, because every day I'm up in Banks' cell using his big Samsung S22 or iPhone 12. Like, you know what I mean? Like every day. So I'm like, no, I'm good. Like I'm good with Banks, right? So they didn't like that. So a couple days go by, and I go to put my clothes in the washer, right? And buddy's like, "Yo, white boy," he's like, "You can't use the washer on A range anymore." And I was like, "What?" All right, watch. So I went and put my clothes in, right? And I started it up, and they're like, "Yeah, it's like that." And I was like, "I guess it is." And then I went to my cell. Now there's this big rapper from Canada, right? His name's Roni. He's like just starting to get famous. So he's from Toronto, but he was in there, and he was in there for allegedly, even though he was in there, pimping 13-year-old girls out of hotel rooms, right? The girl was 13, the other girl was like 14 or something like that. So, and he was like the big dog. Like everybody, like, that's the thing I didn't understand about the pen is like there could be guys with rape charges and they're fine. And then there's another guy with the same charge, and those same guys are on him. You know what I mean? Like I didn't understand that about the gangs, right? Like, um, so anyways, so I come out the cell the one day, and they're like talking shit to me and like chirping me, and I was like, "Yo, this is what I don't understand." I was like, "Yo, y'all are fucking goofs," and I shouldn't have said that because goof in Canada is like the ultimate. Like you say goof and you're fighting. You know what I mean? Like you call somebody a goof, it's see, everybody says different shit. Like I was taught goof means get out or fight. That's what you say to somebody when you're kicking them off the range or you're fighting them. You say goof, right? But then it switched into now a child molester is a goof diddler. You know what I mean? Like so, if you call somebody a goof, it's like the ultimate form of disrespect in the Canadian prison system, right? So I was like, I don't understand you fucking goofs. I was like, your big dog is a fucking sex offender, and I'm here on solid charges. Like, what the fuck? Why y'all fucking with me, right? And they're like, yeah, it's like that. Like, yo, you really just, okay, we'll see, right? And I walk back into my cell, and I'm like, why the fuck did I just say that? You know, I'm like, fuck, right? So a couple of days go by, and I'm waiting for it, bro. And then, like, they waited, bro. So, like, 2 or 3 days go by, and I was on these crazy sleeping pills. There were these yellow pills. I think they were amitriptyline or something like that, and they would knock me out for days, bro. Like I could sleep a whole day and a half. Like so, but every morning for breakfast, they buzz your door open, right? But the pin doesn't pop until you pull the door. You know the pin that pops out.
Mhm.
So your door will be unlocked because they're magnetic, right? The locks, but until somebody opens it, the pin doesn't click. So I'm laying in my bed and I've been asleep for like probably like 18 a long time, like 18 hours, like almost 20 hours. You know what I mean? And I'm like just waking up. I'm all groggy, right? And I'm laying there and I'm on my stomach and I hear the pin pop. But I think that it's easy because I was selling so much tobacco that when I would sleep for like a day or two, I would let Easy come in my cell and he would take my ashtray because there'd always be like half rolled cigarettes in it, and he would just smoke that until I woke up, right? And like I just let him. So I'm thinking it's easy. And then I have no shirt on, and I feel this guy. He cut me with a razor. I'm like, there's like I have like this. It's not big. He didn't get me deep, right? I rolled out, but there's like, I think it's the other side. Can you see that X?
Yeah. I saw it on the other side.
Yeah, sorry, I forget what side it is sometimes. So he hit me with the first one, and it curves. The way it curves is because I rolled out of bed when he was getting me with the second one, right? But it was just one guy and myself. So I jump up, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" I'm all groggy. So we start like tussling, right? And I throw him into my shelf, and I break my fucking TV with him, right? I was so mad about that. So I throw him into my shelf. My TV, he hits my TV. It falls off the thing, breaks, and like I hit him a couple times, and he runs out my cell, right? And now I'm like, what the fuck, right? I'm like, I knew it was going to come, but I didn't think I'd be sleeping, right? So I had a toothbrush with 2 razors melted into it, and I had just moved it. I used to keep it above my windowsill thing, right? Because not windowsill, but like the way the bricks came out, you could set it up there, right? Because in Collins Bay Medium, they really didn't do cell searches unless you gave them a reason to, you know? So I used to just keep it sitting up there. But I had it was winter time now, right? Or it was like fall time, so they gave out the winter jackets, like these green like canvas jackets with like a big like bright strip, you know, like the construction worker type strips, has those on it, right? So I had slit the jacket open same way I did with my gun, and I put the razor in there, and I forgot, right? So it's hanging on my thing, and I'm like looking around my room for my razor myself, and I'm like, where the fuck is this thing, right? And then I look up, and boom, there's 4 of them coming into my cell, right? There's 4 dudes coming in my cell, and I was like, oh fuck. So the cells are big in Collins Bay though, and they're all single cells, right? You'll never get a cellmate in Collins Bay because it just gets too crazy. So the cells are big enough for 4 people, and they're like, the bed is here along this way, the shelf's along this way, right? Toilet's here, and then the wall curves, and then it's the door, right? And then there's a window behind you, and my chair. They give you like a lawn chair type chair, and that's sitting in front of the window, right? So I'm backing up because I'm like, oh fuck, and they're like talking shit, telling me like, oh you fuck, you're gonna get it type thing, right? So I'm backing up, and my fucking legs, my like bottom of my knees hit that chair, right? And I fucking fall into the chair, and they just rush me and beat the fuck out of me, bro. I didn't even get a single punch off. Like my head looked like a blue pumpkin. Like it was bad, bro. They stomped me for so long, and the thing that happened was they were like yelling, like like yo, you fucking goof, like fuck you type shit. And my cell was like 4 cells down from the bubble where the COs sit, and the door wasn't. They didn't. If they would have closed that door and locked it, they probably would have killed me, honestly. And the COs had heard it, so they came, right, and they broke it up, whatever. And then they brought me to medical and shit. And they asked me straight up, they're like, do you want to go back to that range? And I was like, are you dumb? No, I don't even want to be in this jail anymore, So they transferred me to Workworth. Well, while I'm on my way to Workworth, I'm on the bus with this big native guy from Winnipeg. His name was Blaze. He was a GC, gangsta crip. He was doing life for murder. He had already been in 13 years. I was 20, I think I was 25 at the time. So he was like 30, something like that, right? And the other two guys that were on the transfer bus with us were both pedophiles because Workworth had a sex offender program, which is crazy because Workworth ended up being the craziest fucking penitentiary that I've been to. Like I've seen so much stuff there. It was insane. So me and Blaze start talking, right? We get there, we go through intake, whatever. They send us to the units. Me and Blaze end up being on the same unit. So we walk up the stairs to the bubble, and the CO's like, do you guys know each other? And I just kind of stood there like, because I'm telling you, this guy, look, I wish I had a picture of him, bro. He ended up being my friend, but like, he just looked so scary, like scars all over him, like just giant, been working out for 13 years, like wears it proud that he's killed people. You know what I mean? Like one of those guys. So I'm like standing there. I don't really say anything. And he's like, yeah. So she's like, okay, you guys can go up into cell 7 together. And I was like, fuck. Okay, cool, right? So we go into the cell, and we got there at count. They do count in the States. You got to lock up for an hour. And okay, so we got there at count. So she's like, all right, go lock up, right? We get in the cell. And mind you, he's the one that said, yes, we know each other. We get in the cell. They lock it, whatever. And he goes, I'm just going to let you know right now, I don't really like white boys. I'm like, what the fuck, bro? Like, I'm like, all right, bro, I just do my own time. Like, I'm like, I promise, like, I'm a good celly, bro. Like, every celly I've had is like me. I'm like, and then, I go, yo, by the way, you can have the bottom bunk. Right. He looks at me and goes, yeah, I fucking know. And I'm like, all right. Like, I don't know why I said that. Like, I should have just assumed, right? But, whatever. So we start talking because, like, we're in there for an hour now. Like, we're setting our beds up and stuff, right? And we start talking, and he's like, I want to see your paperwork, right? And I was like, yeah, no problem. Like, that's that picture of the one I sent you that had the circle that said not a goof on it. I don't know if you remember that. I had that pinned to my wall, right? I got an institutional charge for that, for intimidating other inmates. Because you've got to bring that. That's why it has so many folds in it, because if you don't bring that sheet with you, they're going to assume that you're a sex offender, like you got to show them that score, that 0 out of 28 sex offense history. Right. So I always had that in my pocket. So I show it to him and he's like, okay, you're good. Whatever. He's like, you want to see my paperwork? And I was like, I believe you. You don't really got to show it to me. And this is how I knew he was proud about the body and stuff. Because when his property ended up coming and like his big stack of paperwork came, he was like showing me like pictures of the crime scene and shit. And like he had tied a guy up with, so they beat the guy to death with the butt of a shotgun. Boom. And then they had tied him up with the power cords from a drill and a skill saw. And the drill and the skill saw were still connected to the power cords. Right. And then they put him under a pile of clothes put a mattress on top of it, and piled a bunch of other garbage on it. And the reason he got caught is because the guy was there for like 2 weeks, and the smell, I guess, was so fucking bad that he was sitting there trapping out of that house. And people were coming in and out, and they're like, "Yo, what the fuck is that smell?" Like, and then they heard, Blaze got into a problem with somebody a couple weeks ago and he killed the guy, and I think the guy's in the house. And like, so he was showing me pictures of it and everything. I was like kind of proud of it, you know what I mean? And then so we ended up becoming friends though, because like I said, I'm a likable celly, so he didn't know anybody there. He wasn't even supposed to be in medium. What he told me was he went to try and get his medium, and he had a new PO because his PO was on maternity leave, and apparently she accidentally approved his medium. So like he wasn't even supposed to be in medium, right? So he was like telling me, he's like, listen, I know I'm going to go back to the max at any time. He's like, I'm making this the best I can, you know? He's like, I haven't smoked a cigarette in years. He's like, weed, nothing. Like I haven't touched a cell phone in years, you know? And I was like, I knew a couple people there from reception, right? So as soon as we got out of account, we come out and I see this guy, Sun, this big Jamaican guy, and he's like, yo, he's like, people call me DT, right? So it stands for downtown, because everything in my city I've done is like really downtown, right? So super basic. But so he's like, yo, DT, right? He's like, what's good? Because when I was in Joyceville, I was playing like $1,000 CeeLo games with this guy English, who was Sun's cousin. English was running the range, right? And because like I had borrowed like by the end of my bit, I had borrowed like $30,000 from my grandma. Like I owe her so much money now. I was such a piece of shit, bro. Like before I didn't change until like the last like 6 months before I got out, you know? Right. So I was playing like $1,000 CeeLo games with this guy, and word had got around that like, yo, DT has money, like, you know, like he's a come up basically. So they like, you know, rock me to sleep for my money basically. You know what I'm saying? So he's like, oh, DT. He's like, oh, you need bogey, you need whatever. And I was like, so I thought about it, and I was like, all right, I'm going to manipulate my celly into having being my muscle then. Fuck this, you know? So I was like, so I got 3 fingers of bogey, which they're $100 each. I got those off of Sun, and I'm like, yo, give me the email. He's like, yo, I know you're good for it. Don't worry. Just pay me whenever, right? And I was like, all right, cool. So I go back to the cell, and I take all the individually wrapped fingers, and I dumped them into one pile on the table, and Blaze is like, what the fuck? He's like, yo, I haven't seen this much tobacco in years, bro. Like, what? Where did you get this, right? And I was like, that's nothing, bro. I was like, I promise you right now, every single time, like every night before we go to sleep, we will smoke a cigarette and smoke a joint. I promise you right now. And he's like, word? He's like, oh, anything you need, I got you, right? So after like, I don't know, 2 weeks of every single night, we had a cigarette or I had shatter or whatever. He was just like we were super tight. We'd sit there every night, smoke, and he'd just tell me stories and talk, and we'd talk and shit, right? And then this guy Smalls, who was Blaze's homie on road, we were out at Yard the one day, and Smalls comes up and he's like, yo, what's up? Da da da. And Blaze is like, oh, yo, this guy was the guy. Like, this guy was one of the main plugs in Winnipeg, da da da, and he's plugged in the jail. So he gives Blaze a phone, right? So now we have a phone in the cell, da da da. So I see Smalls by himself out at Yard one day, and he's like, oh, come here. And I'm like, what's up, bro? And he's like, how is it living with Blaze? And I was like, bro, he's sick. He's a dope guy. And he gave me this look like, for real? And I was like, yeah, bro, like we're tight, you know? Like, I don't know, he fucks with me, and he's like, yo, I'm gonna give you a heads up. He's like, yo, he killed his cellmate in Stony. There's a pen in Edmonton or Winnipeg or something, and it's called Stony Mountain. He's like, bro, he killed his cellmate and kept him under the bunk for a day and a half. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, well, he was waiting to go to the pen, bro. And I was like, no, you're lying, right? So now, like, because everything was good, but now I'm worried. I'm like, why would you tell me that, you know? So we're in the cell the one day, and this guy Spanish pops his head in the cell, and he's like, do any of you guys do crystal? And I was like, oh, I love crystal, you know? So I was like, yeah, let me get a gram of that. So I get a gram of crystal, and I'm like, oh, you want to do something? And he's like, I don't know if I should. And I should have took that as a sign, you know? I should have took that as a sign. He's like, I don't know if I should. And I was like, bro, just do a line with me, right? And he's like, nah, if we're going to do it, we're going to smoke it. Go find some tinfoil. So I find some tinfoil, and we start smoking, right? And lockup comes that night, and so we're locked in the cell. And I'm like, bro, one time I got into a fight with my celly, bro. I was like, I thought I was going to kill him. I was just talking shit, right? I was like trying to bring it up. I'm like, I thought I was going to kill him, da da da. And he kind of looked at me, right? And I was like, "Wow, you ever been in anything like that?" And he's like, "Bro, I fucking tied a guy up and made him live under the bed." And I was like, "Oh, what? For real?" He's like, "Bro, I told you I don't like white boys." And I was like, "Huh?" He's like, "Racist ass white boys, bro." He's like, "I'll kill every single one of them." He's like, I was like, "What?" I was like, "Bro, like, we're good, right?" Like, and he's like, "Nah, bro." He's like, "When we first got in the cell, he's like, by like, because I didn't have the sides, I just had this, right?"
Mhm.
So he's like, "Bro, by the way you looked, I thought you were gonna be like a racist, like biker type guy, right?" He's like, "No, but you're actually pretty cool, bro." Da da da. He's like, "I didn't mean to kill the guy, but once I killed him, I just made him live under the bed." And I was like, "Made him live under the bed? Like, what are you even saying?" You know what I mean? So I was like, "Yo, this guy's crazy." But at this point, he was completely on my side, right? So I was like, "This is dope. Like, ain't nobody fucking with me." Because, yo, people were scared of this guy. Like, he was massive, bro. And, like, he really could fight. And, like, you could just tell, you know what I mean? Like, he always had a shank. Like, we had these plexiglass shanks. So they ain't going off in metal detectors, right? So in the gym, there's like a fire exit plan posted to the wall, right? But it's sandwiched in between two pieces of plexiglass held in by rivets. Well, this guy Mikey, so the crew ended up being me, Blaze, Mikey, Sammy, and then this J guy ended up coming, and sometimes there was this AK guy because he was half black, half native, but he was like the hitter for the Crips in there, you know, like he did all their work and shit. So he was like half with us, half with them, and Blaze didn't like that, right? So that started problems. But so me and Mikey, we broke the plexiglass in the gym off of the fire exit plan, right? And we snuck it out. Well, we ripped bed sheets real thin, right? And then he grabbed one side, I grabbed one side, and we sawed back and forth and like made these shanks out of this plexiglass, right? So we all had shanks. So Smalls ends up getting because drones are real big in Canada. That's like what they do is I don't know if they do that in the States, but like the drone, yeah, okay, the drone will come, drop, and then somebody gets paid to go and pick it up, right? So Smalls ended up hitting a drone play. So he had like a lot of shit. So he gives Blaze a half ounce of crystal, a cell phone, and like a bunch of bogey. And he's like, "Okay, like you're gonna start working for me," type deal, right? And Blaze is like, "Yeah, word." So like we owed Smalls like $1,300 for the half ounce of crystal, right? So Blaze is like, "I can't use my aunt's bank account. My aunt's the only person that I have on road. Can we use yours?" And I was like, "Yeah, my grandma will do that, no problem." So we start using my grandma's bank account for e-transfers, right? So then so we would send the money to my grandma, right? Right. Terrible, bro. Terrible. So we would send the money to my grandma, and then I would send it to his aunt. You know, he didn't want the e-transfers to his aunt from a million different people, right? So I was like, all right, whatever. So that built a lot of trust with us though, because like I was holding the money, you know, like the very first time we ever did it, he was like, "Bro, you send that yet? You send that yet? You send that yet?" And then it turned into like, "Bro, I know you'll send it" type thing, right? So we're selling a bunch of crystal and we're always on the phone and shit at night. And then so they call me in and they're like, "Hey, you're up for a single cell." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no." I was like, me and my cellie came on the same transfer. He's a lifer. He should be before me. Like I'm out of here in a year and a half, you know? And I had told him when we first, I was like, "Yo, if they offer me a single cell for some reason, I will give it to you." Like I had told him that previously, you know? And I was like, "I can't take the single cell." And Michelle, the CO, she's like, "Okay, so you're refusing it? We'll just call next up." And I was like, "No, no, no, like that doesn't make any sense." So I'm arguing with her. I'm like, "Listen, like we came on the same transfer. He is doing life. I'm out in a year and a half. Why would I? The single cell has to go to him first. Like, you know, what's the big issue?" So then the 4 bar came in, right? Like the sergeant, and she's the one that received me and Blaze and A&D. So I'm like, "Yo, Joanne," I'm like, "You received me and Blaze on the same day in A&D. Like, Michelle's trying to make me either refuse the single cell or take the single cell and give it to somebody else." And then she's like, just fucking let him have it, right? So Michelle didn't like that. So she was like, "Fuck you" type thing. She was on me after that. So I go back to the cell and I'm like, "Yo, bro, pack your shit." And he's like, he gets all defensive, right? He's like, "Fuck you mean pack my shit," right? And I was like, "Yo, you're going to a single cell, bro." And he's like, "Oh, for real?" I'm like, "Yo," I explained that. I'm like, "Yo, they just tried to offer it to me, bro. Single cell for 2 days, brother. 2 days." So day 2, we get out unlocked. I go down to his cell and I'm like, "Yo, have you slept yet, bro?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." Kept saying he was sleeping, right? And I was like, I could tell he wasn't. And like me and him were smoking like a gram and a half a day. You know what I mean? Like, we're smoking a lot of crystal. And his head starts spinning, bro. And he's like, I think AK is a spy. And I
No.
was like, oh man, like AK fucks with us, bro. Like, he's literally part of a gang. He can't just only hang out with us. You know what I mean? Plus, you're from a different set. Like, you're a gangster Crip. They're Driftwood Crips. You know what I mean? Like, he's just our friend. Like, he's like, I think he's a spy. I think he's a spy. Da da da. And I was like, oh fuck. So that night, we're sitting in the cell, in Blaze's cell. We're all smoking, getting high. It's me, Mikey, Jay, Sammy, and Blaze. AK comes in. Blaze looks at me. He's like, we're doing it. And I was like, doing what? Like, and we're whispering. I'm like, doing what, bro? And he's like, bro, make a braid right now. And I was like, I don't know how to braid. AK's like, yo, I'll braid for you. And I was like, oh, shit. So we ripped the bed sheets. AK braids it up. The way that the doors work in Workworth is they're on a sliding track, so that the CO can buzz it from the bubble and it'll slide open. And then you can grab it with your hands and slide it closed too, So if you make a braid and go from under the door and put it around that little track, that door can't slide open because it's tied, And then there's a window in the door and they give you a cell kit, right? Which is a little mini broom and a dustpan and a toilet brush. Well, Blaze took the stick off the broom, put it on the little edge of the window of the door, and put like 4 books behind it. So now the cell door is locked. Like, it can't open. It's tied closed, plus it's like blocked with the broom and the thing, right? It can't open. So AK's like, yo, what the fuck are you doing this for, right? And Blaze is like, yo, I don't want somebody to rob us. He's like, I think somebody's trying to rob me. He's like, I gotta get this shit out. He was making it seem like he had the shit hooped, right? So AK's like, oh, okay, word, I understand that. And AK made the biggest mistake ever, bro. He pulled out his ceramic blade, right? And I get what he was doing. He was trying to disarm the situation and be like, yo, check this, like, here, like, you know what I mean? Like, yo, check this. He wasn't trying to be like, yo, I got a shank, So he was like, yo, Blaze, check this, right? Like, even let Mikey hold it. If he was on some tough guy shit, he wouldn't have let somebody else hold it. You know what I mean? I get what he was doing, but in Blaze's head, that's all he needed to see, right? So I had these 2 picks on me. They were like, Mikey had this bar, and then you take the shaver blade, you know what I'm talking about, and you use it like a little hacksaw. It'll cut through anything, I had one tied to the end of a pencil crayon, and like, just took me like 4 days, but I cut through this bar, right? So I made these 2 picks that were like this big. Then there was the 2 ceramics. Like, everybody in the cell had a shank, right? So Blaze had the first little ceramic that I ever gave him. So it was like this big and I had these other 2 picks on me, and AK's like, yo, who are you talking about? Like, who's trying to rob you, bro? Let's go and get them right now. He's like, I'll ride with you. Let's go get them right now. And Blaze is like, I'm standing over by the door because the cell's packed, right? So like, Blaze is sitting here on the bunk. AK's sitting here on the bunk. Sammy's here on the bunk. Jay's standing over here in front of the table. And Mikey's sitting in this chair. I'm standing in front of the door. So AK's like sandwiched in the middle. I'm looking at AK can't see me because he's sitting on the bunk and the top bunk would be blocking it, right? So my head is like where the foot rests so he can't see me, but me and Blaze can see each other, right? So Blaze is like, he's like, go get him. Go get him. And I was like, no. Mm-hmm. He's like, get him. I was like, bro. And then this is kind of what saved me when I went to an ex jail, because I was like, yo, on my daughter, bro, you're wrong. I think you're wrong, Blaze, on my daughter. And AK is like, what are you talking about, right? But it made sense later on, right? So he's like, what are you talking about? And Blaze is like, I think dude's trying to rob me. And AK's like, who? Blaze is like, you. Turn, boom, hit him with the plexiglass. AK starts screaming. Like, I ain't never seen or heard a grown man. I don't blame him, but I ain't never heard a grown man scream like that. Plus, he didn't know that we weren't all in on it. Like, Blaze just did that rogue on his own, right? So now he's thinking, like, there's 5, 6 guys in a cell, and he's thinking we're all about to start poking him, right? So he's screaming, and Blaze is hitting him. And then the plexi breaks on him, right? So Blaze is like, give me that other pick. And AK's like, scurried out now, and I'm standing against the door like I told you, right? So Blaze stands up and grabs AK and pushes him against me. He's telling me to hold him. So now I'm like, what the fuck? Blaze is like, hold him arms. And you too. So I fucking boom, put my arms around him, and I'm wearing a gray Reebok tracksuit, mind you. This shit was fucking burgundy by the time this was done, bro. So I got my arms around him, right? And AK's gang is at the door. They're looking through the window, banging on it. Let him out, let him out, let him out. There's like, bro, I swear on my life, there's like 12 guys at the fucking door. Let him out, let him out. Now I'm just waiting for the COs to come. But this jail is so crazy, bro. Like fights happen and COs don't come at all. So Blaze ends up, I give him a pick that's on my hip, right? So now this guy's getting stabbed with a fucking metal one. Right? So I'm like, fuck this. I'm going in my head, I'm going home in a year and a half, bro. I'm like, I can't do this. So his gang on the outside of the door, they had cut the braid already, right? They cut the braid. So I knocked the broomstick handle down with my fucking with my elbow. And AK, like, they seen me do this, right? So I knocked the broomstick down, and there's two buttons in the cell. One you press and it calls for help, and one you press and it opens the door. So I knocked the broomstick off and I pressed the button to open the door. Boom. So AK scurries out. Blaze never seen me do that. So he's doing life. I'll never see this anyways. So AK scurries out and the door doesn't open all the way. So I grab the door and I slam it back shut because those fuckers are going to come in now, right?
Right.
So I slam it back shut. And Blaze is like, yo, y'all fucking with me? Yo, what did he say? He said to the max or to the morgue. And I was like, I'm going home in a year. What do you mean? So I'm like, what the fuck, bro? So Blaze is like, yo, you guys are all pussies. He's like, DT's the only one that fucking helped me. No, not thinking like, I'm the only one that just saved this guy's life. Fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, you just put me in this. My tracksuit, bro, it was a gray Reebok tracksuit. I swear to God, it was so fucking red and just soaked with blood because, yo, he got hit in the side of his neck, like just a little one in the side of his neck, but it squirted, bro. He's gotten hit in his fucking ribs everywhere, bro. Blaze was having the fuck out of him. This guy almost died. He had a collapsed lung, everything, bro. So I'm soaked. Now, this is like maybe 30 minutes before count. Like, they're about to call count at 10 o'clock, and everybody has to go to their cell and lock up. Like, and I'm like, what the fuck are we going to do? And he's like, we're going to the max, you know, like to the max or to the morgue, motherfucker. He's like, yo, start rolling bogeys. Throws me the tobacco. He's like, start rolling bogeys. I'm like, holy fuck. So I'm rolling bogeys. I'm looking at Mikey and Sammy, and they're like, what the fuck, bro? I look over at Jay, and Jay's like, what the fuck? Jay was like the money guy with us, you know what I mean? Like, he had a lot of money. So he's like, why did I even come to this cell? I'm like, mind you, I'm like, I don't even have my shoes on. Like, I'm wearing my flip-flops because I woke up from a 2-day meth bender, had no food in my cell except craft dinner because me and Blaze used to pitch on food, but we would keep it in his cell because I would wake up in the middle of the night and eat it all. You know what I mean? So I go down to his cell. That's literally why I went to his cell, was to get food and just check on how things were doing. And then that all fucking happened, right? So I'm like, I'm trying to explain. There's guys at the door, like his gang, like, yo, what the fuck? Like, yo, you guys are fucking dead, you know? I'm like, I'm not even wearing shoes, bro. Like, I didn't know this was going to happen. And so they call count finally, right? And I'm like, what are we going to do? Like, what are we going to do? He's like, just stay in the cell, pass count, refuse to go to count. They'll fucking take us all out. And I was like, okay, I guess. So they finally come and they're doing like the checks, and they open his door and they're like, what the fuck are you guys doing in here? Da da da. Like, it's 10 minutes past count. Get the fuck to your cells. Mind you, everybody had passed me their fucking things. So I have like 5 shanks on me, and the broken one was in the toilet, right? So I have like 5 shanks on me. I'm covered in blood, bro. But it's like kind of dark, you know, the light's off in the cell. He has the light cover, you know what I mean? So it's like kind of dark. And there's five of us plus Blaze in the cell, right? So the COs are like, get to your fucking cells. You're all getting charged, you know? And as like they're scurrying out, because they're all down this way, I cut and go this way, right? Right past the CO. I'm like, holy fuck. But as I'm walking to my cell, bro, there's like all these gang members at the door, and they're like, oh, you're fucking dead. As I'm walking to my cell, it was like the walk of like hell, bro. They're all like, yo, you're fucking dead. You're going to get it, bro. And I'm like, oh, what the fuck, right? So I get to my range. I get in my cell. And there's a next guy. There was 2 Bankses that I met, right? I had Lifer Banks in Collins Bay that I was working for. And then there was this other guy who was a blood. His name was Banks as well. He's from Toronto, Malvern though, right? So they're bloods, and this was a Crip range too. So he's telling me, because we're across from each other, he's like, yo, what the fuck happened? I'm like, bro, Blaze just snapped. I don't know what happened. You know what I mean? Like, I was not involved in this. So the COs don't know that anything happened. They don't know yet, you know? Like, AK went to his fucking cell and like was gonna try and hug it out until like he almost died, you know, and then they had to bring him to medical and shit. So he's like, the next morning, they still don't know nothing's happened. They let us out an hour early before everybody else because I was on Suboxone. So was Blaze, so was Sammy, so was Mikey. Jay was the only one that wasn't. So they let us all out. We all meet in the Suboxone room, right? I didn't sleep a wink that night. I put on all my clothes. I put on like 3 pairs of pants, like 4 shirts, my good shoes, because like I knew I was like, fuck this, I'm not staying in this jail. I'm doing something to get taken out of here, you know? So we all meet up in Suboxone in the morning, and Blaze and Sammy both have their shanks on them. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck you need those for? I was like, I thought that we were like, what are we gonna do? And Blaze is like, yo, I don't care if anybody says that we checked in or not. He's like, we'll do it solid. He's like, a solid check-in, bro. He's like, the first person that comes around that corner, we're jumping them and they'll take us. And I was like, fuck. I was like, all right, whatever. It's better than fucking dying. So first person that walks around the corner is my buddy Tino. The guy's like 100 pounds. I'm like, no. We can't. Blaze, no. Like, we can't. He's like, all right. Because, like, we would have killed this guy. You know what I mean? He was just like, yeah, no. So the next guy that comes around the corner is this native guy, Conrad. He's like kind of like the same size as Blaze. And Blaze is like, yo, this dude owes me money. Walks up, wham, one punches him, right? Drops him. Him and Sammy start beating on this guy, right? I kick him one time. Sure enough, the COs don't see me do anything. They come and they spray Blaze and Sammy. And Mikey cut back to his cell. Mikey didn't want no parts of it. So they take Blaze and Sammy, and I was supposed to be part of it. And they make me go back to my cell, bro. So now I'm in my cell, locked in my cell. And I'm like, I'm telling the CO, I'm like, I got to go. I got to leave. I got to go. And they're like, why? Are you in danger? Why? And I was like, I got to go, bro. I was like, I was part of what just happened. And they're like, no, you weren't. And I was like, I kicked him in the face. Yes, I was. And they're like, what the fuck? They're like, we got to figure this out, right? So they locked me in my cell. I'm in my cell from 7 in the morning all the way until 9:30 at night when they finally took me. So, and everybody else on the unit is unlocked. So these guys are coming to my door all day long. Bro, they're trying to tell me like,
you're done.
Right? Yeah, bro. Like half of them were saying that. And then they almost got me because the one guy was like, he's like, yo, bro. He's like, AK's my best friend. He's like, I talked to him. He's like, yo, he knows that you tried to stop it, that you had nothing to do with it. But in my head, I'm like, even though that's true, I still held him. I still gave Blaze the shank. And they're not going to forget that. Like, you know, I was like, they can't get to anybody else. They're going to have to get to me, you know? Like, they're going to get to me because this is jail. It doesn't matter. Like, they want their retribution some way, you know? They want Blaze to get word that I got fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm like, nah. And they're like, yo, just come out your cell. And then the one dude, he's like, yo, Arab's running the range. And he says, everything's good. You're good. And I was like, oh, yeah? So why was Arab just at my cell telling me I was going to get killed then? And he's like, he looks at Arab and he's like, yo, what the fuck, bro? And I was like, yo, you guys are just trying to play me. Fuck that, bro. So I sat in my chair, bro. Like I put my chair at the back of the cell and I had 2 shanks in my hand, bro. And I sat like this because I was like, if for some reason, because the COs are crooked in Workworth. You can even look it up. A bunch of COs just got fired. I just got pulled out of my job. I'll tell you this in a minute. So I'm sitting there with 2 shanks. I'm waiting for that door to open. I'm like, fuck, right? So finally, nighttime comes, right? It's like 9:30 at night, and I press the emergency button. I'm like, fuck this. Press the emergency button. So the CO comes running to my cell. She's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I need to leave. She's like, why? Like, she's like, were you part of what happened to that guy that got stabbed? And I was like, fuck it. Yes. I was like, I need to leave. So finally, they brought me to a transition range, right? Which was full of guys from Winnipeg. That range almost popped off too, right before I got transferred. I was on that range for like 3 months. I seen a couple guys get robbed for all their shit. Like everybody's walking around with a shank. And it's such a smaller range, but it's outside on the units. They call it PC, right? But like, fuck them. I don't really care. I needed to get the fuck out of there. Right. So I was there for I don't know, a couple weeks, maybe like, I think at max, I was on that range for like 2.5 months ish. And I was trying to stay there because I only had like a little over a year left. And I was like, yo, this range is small. I was like, yeah, like there's a lot of shit going on, but none of it involves me. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, maybe I should try and stay here. My PO's like, you can't. She's like, I could sign you to Beaver Creek right now, which is like low medium. And I was like, low.
Yeah, why am I not on the bus?
Right? I was like, yeah, let's go. Right? So they sent me to Beaver Creek. I get there. It's a fucking Driftwood jail. I didn't know that. and the guy that just got poked is a Driftwood Crip, right?
Okay.
So I get there, and they put me on Horizon. So Beaver Creek is like, it's living units. It's not cells. It looks like my apartment, kind of. You know what I mean? Like you walk on, and the range is an apartment. There's bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room. You know what I mean? But there's like a max unit there too, which looks exactly like Collins Bay. It's all cells and shit. But like the doors are open all day long, except for the 3 counts a day. Other than that, you can walk around the whole campus, go to the library. You know what I mean? Like you can go anywhere. You just can't go onto other units. But guys, I snuck on a different unit and got this tattoo done. Like it's supposed to be a cover up. I paid for it all, and then I got transferred out of there. But anyways, so I get there and I walk on Horizon, and I still have my mattress on my fucking shoulder, right? And the CO's like about to give me my key. And this girl, we call her Mama June. She looked like Honey Boo Boo Mom. Like she like just this big fucking whale looking bitch. And she is out to terrorize you. If you're in a good day, she wants you to have a bad day. She's fucking terrible, bro. And she admits it too. She's like, I get a kick out of like fucking with you guys. You know what I mean? Like she just should not be a CO. She's fucked. So anyways, she about to give me my key. And there's a guy named Wheezy and a guy named Cosmo. And Wheezy ended up being my dog, but he calls me over. They call me over to the laundry room. And this CO's like, come on, let him put his stuff down first. And that's right when I knew. I was like, okay, this place looks really nice, but this place is corrupt, you know? So they pull me into the laundry room and they're like, where'd you come from? I was like, Workworth. They're like, oh yeah? They're like, what's your name? I was like, DT. They're like, so you know that Somalian guy, AK? And I was like, so I just told the story. I was like, yo, listen, my celly tweaked out. I didn't know that it was going to happen. I was like, and I never said that I held him. I was like, he pushed me again. He pushed AK against me, and I was trapped against him in the door. So it looked like I was holding him while he was poking him. You know what I mean? And I was like, I'm the one that pressed the button to let him out. I was like, yo, if you can get a hold of anybody at Workworth, tell them, ask AK. I literally tried to stop it. I told Blaze, like, I didn't think that he was trying to rob us. You know what I mean? And so I was on thin ice there for a couple of days, and then I ended up being on the same range as Wheezy. So I was like, this can't get any fucking worse right now, you know? So Wheezy comes out the one day and he's like, you want a job? And I was like, what? And he's like, you want a range job? And I was like, fuck yeah. Cause you know, you get your $36 a week, but if you don't work, you get $12 a week. You know what I mean? Or every 2 weeks. So, he's like, you want a range job? And I was like, yeah, for sure. So he's like, I'll make you the range cleaner. And he's like, I talked to Banks last night. And I was like, which one? And he's like, Workworth. He's like, you're good, eh? And I was like, all right, like I appreciate it. He's like, yo, like you're good. He's like, you saved my boy. And I was like, thank fuck. Oh, if you only knew. You know, like, but I really did save him, but I also did hold him, you know, like, but so yeah, I go out, and buddy Jay that was in the cell when this stuff happened, right? Well, Jay had ended up getting beat up at Workworth over that shit. So he got transferred as well. And he was in Beaver Creek. And Sammy ended up in Beaver Creek as well. Like the one that jumped Conrad with me and Blaze.
Right.
So Blaze ended up like saying like it was all him, whatever. So they let Sammy go to Beaver Creek. So the 3 of us ended up together, right? Well, Jay, like I told you, he was the money guy. He had a little cell phone. So he lets me use it. He's like, yo, here, like you can go make some calls, bring it down to your range, whatever. He's like, oh, I got Crystal, I got Bogey, whatever. I'm like, all right, cool. So like we're good. We're set up, right? Well, Sammy, this scheming fucker, I'm doing laps with Sammy one day. Sammy was a 5-star blood from Winnipeg, right? Well, there was this other guy who was like, he thought that he was a big dog in Beaver Creek. His name was OJ. He was also a 5-star blood. So I'm doing laps around the track with them. And Sammy's like, yo, you know the password to Jay's phone? And I was like, yeah, like I use it all the time. Why? And he's like, well, yo, OJ will give us $4,000 for the phone. And I was like, what? And he's like, he wants the contacts in it. He knows Jay from Road. He's like, they are beef, da-da-da. And OJ's like, yeah, like he ripped me off on Road. And I was like, bro, I'm not doing that. I was like, Sammy, I thought that the 3 of us were boys. Like after what we just went through, that should have made us tight. You know what I mean? Like we all made it out of that. We all should have died in Workworth, you know? Like we all just made it out of that. And Sammy's, OJ's like, just think about it, right? And he walks away. And Sammy's like, come on, bro. Like it won't be hard. Just Jay gives you the phone anyways. Just walk off the range and give it to OJ. And I was like, let me think about it, right? which I never thought about it. I went right back to the range, and I'm like, I went up to Jay's range because I was down on A and he was up on J. So I went up to Jay's range, and I'm like, I knock on the door. We go, Jay here or whatever, because you're not allowed on other people's ranges. So he comes out, and I'm like, come to the laundry room. We go to the laundry room, and I'm like, yo, don't let anybody use your phone anymore. And he's like, why? So I explained to him what happened, and he's like, what? And I was like, keep that between me and you, just me and you know. I was like, it's funny because Sammy always goes to Jay like, yo, can I get some bogey? Yo, like we're dogs. Let me get some crystal. You know what I mean? Shit like that.
Right.
So for a month, bro, it was under wraps. Nobody knew, right? Well, they come up to me again a month later and they're like, yo, you gonna do this or what? And I was like, I don't know. Let me think about it. And he's like, nah, bro, like you already said that. Like, are you gonna do it or no? And I was like, nah, probably not, right? And he's like, for real? And then I kind of just went back into the range, right? And they're like, yo, what the fuck? So I go right back up to the J and I'm like, yo, forward to the laundry room. Well, there's this guy, Kenny, now, who's in there. And Kenny, like, was a big drug dealer on road, but he got into crystal real bad in jail. So he just started ripping people off and making big messes and starting drama and, like, just was that guy that loved to do that now, you know? So Jay didn't know this yet, though. And I didn't know that Kenny had bought in the phone charger, because guys will charge you $1,200 for the charger. You know what I mean? Just for the cord, another $500 for the block, like, you know? So Kenny had bought in the charger. So technically it was their phone. So I'm like, yo, I got to tell you something, Jay. Like, and I'm like, I don't know this guy. And he's like, yo, Kenny's good. You can talk in front of him. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm like, yo, they just came and asked me again. And Kenny's like, what? He's like, that's my phone too. That's my da-da-da. And I was like, bro, like, chill. I'm not doing nothing, right? Like, I'm like, yo, this doesn't leave us. I'm like, Jay's already known this for like a month. Nothing's happened. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just letting you guys know. Like, and Kenny's like, all right, I won't tell nobody. Well, about like 3 hours later, somebody comes and knocks on my range door and they're like, yo, Vatos wants to talk to DT. I'm like, who the fuck is Vatos? And he's a lifer. When he was in Collins Bay Max, he was the head of the Spanish gang, right? So I was like, oh, shit, okay. Like, what the fuck's he want to talk to me about, right? So I go outside, and Vatos grabs me, bro, and puts me up against the wall. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? And he's like, yo, so you're trying to steal my boy's phone, da-da-da. And I was like, no. What the fuck are you talking about? I was like, yo, I'm the one that told him. Then Kenny comes walking up, and he's like, yo, chill. What are you doing? And Vatos is like, what are you talking about? You said this. And Kenny's like, no, he's the one that told us, bro. Like, chill. And I was like, why would you tell anybody, bro? Like, what the fuck? So I have to break the whole story down to these Spanish guys now, right? Well, OJ was the barber at Beaver Creek. There's like a whole like barber. I'm sure you've seen that in Friends, right? So OJ's the barber. So they go to the barber shop, like fucking 5 of them, 6 of them, and they all have shanks on their waist and shit. And like they make OJ look like a fucking bitch, you know? And I was like, oh man, I was like, this is coming back on me tenfold. Like, there's, you know what I mean? I was like, they made him look like a bitch when he was like trying to make a name thinking he was a big man in this jail. Now he looks like the ultimate bitch. I was like, now he's going to have to feel hard again and he's going to come at me. I know it, you know? So I go back in onto my range and I'm like, yo, Weezy, I'm like, can I get a shank, bro? Like, do you have a shank? And he's like, the fuck you need that for, bro? So I explained to him the story and I was like, listen, this is my plan, bro. I was like, I know as soon as they call fucking Yard Up, OJ's coming right here. I was like, I'm just gonna meet it head on. Let me get a stick. I was like, I'm just gonna walk to his range and fucking deal with it. You know what I mean? I was like, I want to get it over with. I don't want to be walking around waiting for something to happen. Let's just go. Whatever happens, happens. Like, but I want to have some protection on me, right? So he's like, oh, I got you. So he gives me this fucking like it looked like a letter opener. You know what I mean? Like this thing was hardcore. And in the bedroom there was wardrobes, right? Well, the handle for my wardrobe, it was like this big chunk of metal kind of, and it was loose. So I unscrewed it with the clippers, and I don't know about in the States, but in your little introduction package, I guess, when they give you your clothes and shit, they give you these big wool socks for wintertime. I don't know if you get those there or not, but you get the big gray wool socks here, right? And so I put that handle in this fucking sock, right? And I tied it up. And I put it in my waist like an idiot, right? Because I'm wearing my jeans and I have a belt. So I tucked it into my waist so the bit of the sock is hanging out. And then I have my hand on the shank and the other thing, right? So I walk out. I don't even make it off the fucking unit yet. And somebody's like, oh, DT, Sammy's outside for you. And I was like, oh, fuck. All right. So I get outside and I'm like, yo, what's good, bro? Like, Sammy's like, yo, what the fuck, bro? Like, why would you tell anybody? Da, da, da. And I was like, yo, why would you try and rob our friend? Like, we're supposed to be like boys, you know? And he's like, yo, like, let's do some laps. And I was like, all right, cool. I was like, I need to go talk to OJ anyways. So we start doing laps. OJ comes up from behind me. Sammy set me up, right? Comes up from behind me and he puts his hands on my shoulders and he's like, yo, DT. He's like, I liked you too, kid. What the fuck, right? And I was like, yo, I'm not gonna rob my friends, bro. Like, and he's like, you gotta leave the jail. Go check in. And I was like, I'm not leaving the jail, bro. And he's like, so what? He's like, you want a 30? I'm not a gang member from Winnipeg. I don't know what a 30 is. It means you get jumped for 30 seconds and you can't fight back, right? So I'm like, bro, whatever. Let's get. I thought that we were gonna fight for 30 seconds. That's what I thought that it was, right?
Right.
So we're halfway around the track, and he's like, you can either check in or you're getting a 30. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck a 30 is. Like, let's get it. You know, I was like, I'm not checking in. Fuck that. So we're almost to the blind spot, and OJ's like, yo, Paul, come here. So Paul and the next guy come over, right? So it's OJ, Sammy, Paul, and I still don't know who this other guy is to this day. But me and Paul ended up being in the low together. So we get to the blind spot, which is it's at the gym and the entrance to the library. It's like a V, the wall, you know, you can't see shit. So I back into the corner so nobody can come from behind me. And I have my hand on that sock thing, right? And my other hand on the shank. And in my head, I'm like, fuck. I'm like, I could use these and make shit so much worse, or I could just fight this guy, right? But I still don't know I'm getting jumped. And I think Sammy's still kind of my friend, right? So I'm turned talking to OJ with my back in the corner. And OJ's like, all right, let's get it then, right? So I square up like me and OJ are going to fight, and Sammy duffs me from the side. Boom. I'm like, what the fuck? So now I'm like, all right, fuck it. I go to pull this thing out of my pants, right? It gets caught on my belt. I can't get it out of my pants. So now they're hitting me, right? Boom. So I'm like, all right, fuck this. So I just turtle up, right? I'm like, I don't even fight back on this one. So now there's 4 of them just hitting me, right? And OJ's like, he counts whatever, times it on his watch. He's like, all right, that's enough. Like 30 seconds, right? It's done. So I'm like still turtled up and I'm like, what the fuck? He's like, no, it's done. You're good. So I look up, right? And as I look up, OJ's like, give him another one. And Sammy kicks me dead in my face. Boom. And my head bangs off the wall, right? I'm like, what the fuck? And they jump me for another 30 seconds, right? So now it's over. And OJ's like, all right, it's done. Same thing. All right, it's done. And I was like, nah, I ain't falling for that again. Like, back the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, get the fuck away from me. And he's like, so Sammy goes to help me up. I'm like, yo, get the fuck away from me, bro. So I get up and I'm like dusting myself off and I pick my hat up and OJ's like, he's like, yo, let me talk to you. Like, we're not done. So I look over at him, wham, knocks me out. Boom. I'm like, what the fuck? You know, like, kind of like, I hit the ground whenever I'm seeing stars. I'm like, what the fuck? So he kind of like picks me up and I'm like, fuck this. I'm going back to my unit. And he's like, no, you're not. He's like, we're going to talk to Jay. He's like, you're going to tell Jay that you made that all up. And I was like, no, the fuck I'm not. And he's like, let's go. We're going to talk to Jay or I promise you it's going to be so much worse, right? But what they didn't know is I told Jay about this the first time a month ago, right? So anything they say isn't going to add up. So we get to the unit. They call Jay out. And I'm not saying nothing. I'm standing on the wall, and Jay's like, or OJ's like, so yo, DT just admitted to me that he made it all up. He came to me like a week ago with the plan. Mind you, I told Jay a month ago, so it couldn't have been that, right? So Jay's kind of looking at me like with a smug look. And then Wheezy comes out, and he's like, yo, what the fuck, bro? Because OJ won't let me leave, right? And Wheezy's like, he's a Driftwood Crip, whatever. And he's like, yo, what the fuck? He's like, yo, what's wrong? Like, DT, you good? And I was like, nah, fam, I'm just trying to go inside. And he's like, let's go then. And OJ's like, And Wheezy's like, what? Like, you know, you got something to say? So we go back inside, whatever. I have a fucking boot print on the side of my face. And he's like, oh, what the fuck? He's like, why didn't you stab him, you know? And I was like, honestly, bro, I was like, I thought about it. And then I was like, I'm just going to make it worse. I'm like, I don't really have people here. So what, I stab him, and then now I got Bloods on me, and I already got Crips on me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, bro, I'll just take the beat, and it is what it is, right? And yeah, like a bunch of shit happened in Beaver Creek, but that was just like one of the most memorable, you know? And then the way I got into drugs again in Beaver Creek, right? Like I started hanging out with all the native guys, and I was making shanks for them. They were giving me $100 a shank, right? I started making them I was in program, And by the third binder, programs were like, "What the fuck is it? Like, what are you doing?" So they give you these binders, and they have those rings that pop. You know what I mean? To put your shit in the middle. So I bust the binder open, and I straighten those out and wrap some shit around it, and then it's like a push dagger. You know, you hold your fist on it, and then the shank comes out the middle, so you just punch with it, right? So I can make 6 of those out of each binder, right? And I got fucking 3 binders, and then program was like, "What are you doing? Like, what keeps happening to your binders?" And I was like, and then I got kicked out of program anyways for showing up like high and shit. But yeah, then people started tweaking and they were gonna jump me and shit. And I was like all the native guys turned on me over like $90, bro. And I was like, "Yo, I'm gonna pay you in a week," you know? And they were just all high on drugs like heroin and fucking meth and shit. And I got so yeah, they I got word that they were gonna jump me. So Cells Rock, I ended up going in front of the bubble and I just hit the first guy. This kid that I didn't like, anyways. So I hit this kid, boom, right in front of the bubble. They came, they took me out. I got shipped out of that jail, right? And I ended up in the low for a bit because that was the last medium other than the low, and then it was out of province, and I only had 6 months left. So they reluctantly let me go to the low, and they said, "One problem, you're getting kicked out, whatever." But there was no drugs, no nothing there. So I started to sober up and I made a plan. And then even my mom thought that I was going to go back to jail. Like, she's like, "I'm going to come pick you up because I think, like, I want to see you before you go back." Right. And like, I thought I was going to go back. And then I walked out the gates, bro, the day I got released. And the CO was like, "I'll see you again soon," or whatever. Right. And I was like, "I ain't never coming back here." I went to the halfway house, bro. I had 9 job interviews. Nobody would hire me. I found my boss at where I work now. I gave him my story, bro, and he's like, "I'm going to give you a chance." He saved my life because I was on the fence, you know? And now I'm working at a machine shop, and I'm about to do an apprenticeship at the end of the year. He's going to put me through for my apprenticeship. I'm going to get my machinist ticket, bro. Like, I just turned my life around. I've been sober for like 2 years now, and shit's just good, bro. You know, I'll never go back to any of that.
Yeah, you had mentioned that this was like the first apartment you ever had, like in your name.
Yeah, bro. This is the first Christmas I ever had with all 3 of my kids, where I actually bought them presents and shit. Like, you know, I get them every other weekend on Wednesdays for dinner. Like, shit's just good now, bro. I would never trade this life for any of that bullshit that I used to have, bro. It's good. You know, I work hard and it's good. And yo, I really appreciate you like having me on, bro. I watch you every day at work. Well, listen to you. Yeah. You're literally playing on my TV right now. Like,
look. That's funny.
Yeah, bro.
No, I listen, I appreciate you coming on. Hey, you guys, if you like the video, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos like this. Also, we're going to leave DT's the link to his TikTok in the description box, so you can click there and go there and follow him. Please consider joining our Patreon. It's $10 a month. We put Patreon exclusive content on there. Colby's going to go through this whole video, and he's going to have to censor it because we used a lot of words for drugs and stuff on here, and there was a lot of violence and stuff. So it's going to have to be censored, but the full video uncensored will be on Patreon. It's $10 a month. We got a ton of uncensored videos on there. So please consider doing that. It really does help Colby and I make these videos. Once again, thank you very much. See ya.